All right, as I said, I'm Michaela. I'll be assisting Ray today. We do have a few CEUs available for those that need them. We have registrations up at the front desk. At the end of the workshop today, I will be passing out some feedback cards. That is really important that we get those back for our programming today. As I said, I will be assisting Ray. We have growing and selling profitable greens all year long. Ray and his wife Ashley own and manage Rose Creek Farm in West Tennessee. And Rose Creek Farm makes over $500,000 annually on less than half an acre.
1 acre.
On 1 acre? Okay. On 1 acre, growing under a mix of tunnels, making his farm one of the highest grossing soil-based farms per acre in the country. Ray recently released his new textbook, Growing Organic Lettuce. He now offers abundant educational programming through Small Farms, Big Change, helping other growers create bountiful operations, master cash flow, grow great crops, and balance farm life and family life. You can follow them online at Rose Creek Farm. And without any further ado, I'd like Ray to get started.
All right, I'm going to bring this a little bit closer. I am really excited to be here, see all you guys. Thank you for coming out this morning. I am going to give you guys more information than you will want to consume in the next 3.5 hours. So hang in there with me. I'm going to really dive as wide and deep as we can possibly go this morning. So before we get started on this, I just want to kind of give you guys a general outline on how this is going to work. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to spend a few minutes telling you guys a little bit about our farm, not too much. And then this workshop is going to be broken up into 3 parts, part 1, part 2, part 3. And I'm not going to take a break. I'm going to keep on going. But what I'm going to do is at the end of each part, I'm going to open that up for Q&A. So if you can hold your questions, because if not, we won't get halfway past the first part. There's just a lot of, I can't cover every single detail in my presentation in 3.5 hours. So what I would like for you guys to do is hold your questions for the end of each part, and then we'll get as many as we can. While we're doing Q&A, that will be the time if you guys, want to take a break. Of course, we're all adults, so you can just leave whenever you want to. But during the Q&A, I'm not going to go through my presentation. So at the end of each part, you guys will have some time to get up if you want to. My daughter is passing out these handbooks. It's basically a workbook that's going to coincide with this workshop. There's some basic charts in there. So as we go along, I would definitely encourage you guys to fill these out as we go. I think the more that you can write down some of these answers to the questions, I think you'll be able to retain a lot more of this information. If you guys have any other questions, if you do not get a booklet or a pen, my daughter Ahava is in the light blue shirt back there with the books, and she can get you guys set up. At the end, she is going to pass out a questionnaire about this event. So if you guys wouldn't mind filling that out and giving that to her, that is a separate questionnaire from the one that the conference is going to give you guys. All right, let's get into it. Well, I thought I was going to. first started the farm in 2009. This was my wife's idea. And after the first year of a dismal, complete failure, we fell in love with the earth. And we really knew that this is something that we wanted to do. Rather than me reinvent the wheel, I decided to hire Paul Whittaker, who's over there. Gentleman over there, I'm sure all you guys know who he is. We hired him. I actually borrowed money, paid to have him come down and get us started. And that first spring, we knew nothing about production, nothing about selling. We took head lettuce to the market, and people were taking head lettuce out of our totes. Like it was mayhem. And so from that moment, we knew that if we were going to have a chance at making a go of this for a career, we were going to have to master the art of growing lettuce year-round. And so many, many thanks to Paul Whittaker for getting us started. Would not be anywhere close to where we are today without having someone like a mentor as Paul. So this is us now. We have 6 kids. At the time when we started, which Paul came to our farm in January of 2010, which I believe is I want to say that was 13 years ago, almost to this week. So it's pretty cool that we're here in this room together with you guys. So we were originally, we only had but one tunnel, and I was a lot more tractor-based, had a lot more animal production, and over the course of time, I really realized in this climate, which for context, we're between Memphis and Nashville, Tennessee, right above the Mississippi border. We get a lot of rain. In fact, in 2019, we received 125 inches of rain, just too much. And so what I learned is that one of these small cat tunnels can literally 5x our production and sales. And so in 2019, we essentially covered the whole farm. I lost about 25 permanent beds by doing that. But the next year, I was able to make almost $150,000 more just because we had less crop loss. We were able to never miss a seeding, on and on. So this is us now. And this is a big part of why we're able to get the kind of money we are, because everything that we plant has a much higher success of reaching to a quality produce that can command a really good price. So here's our tunnels here. This tunnel over here was taken in April, early April. Those are big pepper plants that are hardening off. And so this just really gives us a lot of options to extend the shoulder season, make sure we have production year-round, and it gives us a good 4 to 6 week jump on these other products, things like peppers and tomatoes that our local market tends to be saturated with. So if we can go to market early, we can just dominate early and just keep dominating the market up until fall. So there's our kids there. One thing that we've really learned about our farm is we've really focused on soil health. We've really focused on team. I have an amazing team. That's why I can be here today. We have a really good team. We've really focused on soil health is one of my personal passions. I will admit I know practically nothing about it, but because there's just so much to learn, and every year it is humbling on how much the earth will give if you take care of it. And this picture, what I kind of compare tunnels to would be, I went on a really long hiking trip with my younger daughter, and we went in this old growth forest. I don't think it's ever been logged. I mean, it's just massive trees, and the topsoil was just magical. And so we were underneath this massive oak tree, and the soil under this tree was loose. It was black. And then all the soil around the tree was hard as a rock. It was rocky. And so what I kind of observed in that moment was that tree really helps deflect that heavy rainfall, right? And so it gets water, but it's a gentle water. And so it's slow enough where the soil can absorb it, right? It's not washing away the organic matter. And so this, in a sense, is my best attempt on recreating that type of ecosystem on a farm. There's nothing natural about current agriculture in the world, right? You're never going to find rows of plants in nature. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to manipulate our environment. Oops, sorry. Wrong way. Go back here. All right. What we're trying to do is replicate as much as we can nature. We really want to take care of the soil. And so for me, it's about protecting the soil from the elements. Heavy rain, hail. I want to protect my plants, right? There's a reason why California is the breadbasket of the country. It has hardly any rainfall. There's going to be a lot less disease. You're not going to have the hail. So I'm trying to move as much as I can that kind of climate that California has to the Mid-South, right? Now, every year there's multiple failures in that attempt, but that principle has really, really helped. And I believe the rate I'm seeing our farm produce, because each year it gets better and better. In fact, I'll say like every, there's this time in the season, usually between April and the end of July, where I'm just like, I had no idea this was possible. Like every year, I'm just amazed. And so we are currently, at the rate we're growing, and how I measure this is our current growth, the amount of failures that I see, which as a farmer who owns this and is looking to the future, all I see is failure, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys seen here, wow, this is amazing, I would like this. But there's a lot of things wrong with this picture that I could talk about all the problems here for hours. So I believe a 1 acre farm that is undercover, a farm that is really in tune with the soil, plants, and is building a team and is focused on sales, we're projected by 2025 for our farm to be grossing $1 million a year. Now, it may seem sane, but it's very doable if you apply these principles, and every year you just get better and better and better. And so we never stop asking ourselves, how can we improve the soil, the plants, our team members? How can we create more value for our customers this year than we did the last? So this is our market. We used to be a lot more wholesale. We lost a lot of that over COVID, and so we had to pivot very quickly because we almost lost the farm. And so we've just gone hard on markets. We just found that if you just, whatever your sales outlet, focus on, if you can, focus on one thing and just go all the way. So we have a farmers market in Memphis, Franklin, Tennessee, and Jackson, Tennessee. Those are our 3 markets. Doing things like this for your markets will really, really help. Like, people talk about this all the time. So these are just little things we try to do to attract people. We are a small fish in a big pond in our market. Most of our farmers are 50 to 100 acres. So we're trying our best to really just wow people every single week. There's our other markets here. And what I found with lettuce, which we're going to get more into this on part 3, is sales, is the problem with growing one crop is that you can only sell so much of it unless you have a massive wholesale account, which I've had before. The issue with wholesale is that you can't get the price that you really need to be really profitable. So I found the more variety you have at your market, the more other head lettuces you'll sell. So you'll see each year we're adding more and more variety, because the more variety we have, the more lettuce we're going to sell. Okay, so that's just, I don't want to get too much into about our farm, because that's really not why you guys are here. But I wanted to kind of give you guys some context of kind of where we come from, where we're at currently. And if you guys want to hear more about like our day-to-day details, there's more information on the back. I'm available here all day today. We can talk shop, and I can talk for literally 15 hours straight about all this stuff. So, all right, so let's get into this. So part 1, seeding, fertility, and fabric. And you'll see why I put that last word. I changed fabric. It was weeding or weeds, and I scratched out weeding, and I put in fabric. So we'll kind of get to that. Okay. So one of the questions I do get asked is, why are you so focused on producing lettuce? Like, why not just focus on everything else? What I found as a first-generation farmer, mind you, when we started our farm, we had $150 in the bank. Like, we had no assets. We had nothing. Both our parents were poor. So when I say we had no money, I mean we had no money, right? So I realized after that first in 2009, when we had a little garden, that was just for our family, and when we decided that we wanted to give a go at this thing, we knew that we had the biggest problem we had to solve was cash flow. That's it, right? Now, I've consulted with other growers who have $20,000, $30,000 to work with. That's amazing. Like, if you can do that, you're 10 years ahead of a grower like myself. So I knew from the get-go I needed cash flow. And so what I wanted was this is what I wanted my first year. So I wanted to skip all the learning and all the heartache and just go right to this, right? But that's not reality, as we all know. And so, but what I knew I needed to get to this was I need a weekly, consistent paycheck from the farm. And so I had to get very, very practical about this. And so this is one thing where I feel like if you're a grower, whether you're year 1 or year 5 and you want to scale up, one of the best things you can do for your farm and your family is figure out how to make more money every single week. Not just in the summertime when it's easy to make money, but like in the shoulder seasons, in the off seasons, especially the time when nobody else has product. And this really hit home. I don't know if you guys got that cold snap that happened over the holidays, but the wind chill on our farm was -20. Never seen that before. All of our farmers got wiped out. We are loaded with produce because we have tunnels, we've invested money, we're ready, and we are killing it right now. We've never made this kind of money right now in January. But that's because I've made sure that we had consistent cash flow that I put back into the farm to invest in tunnels, row cover, team members. So for me, it's lettuce is the easiest and fastest way to generate income aside from microgreens. In some cases, I would say, because I do microgreens as well, on scale, it can be somewhat easier to grow head lettuce than it can be micros, because micros are so finicky when it comes to diseases. So in 2010, from the time that Paul Whittaker came and kind of showed us how to grow lettuce in the tunnel, in a high tunnel, in the spring, The problem that I had with that is that I failed to ask them, how do I do this in the summertime, right? And so once June came, I had nothing. And so I quickly realized, because during that spring, that first year, I was doing several $100s a week. And I realized if I could have kept this going, I could have hired someone part-time to help my farm or invest in more things. So once you kind of understand this concept of how can we get this succession of seeding, planting, harvesting, cashing a check each week, that is going to really help you make your dreams, your goals happen much, much faster. If you focus on tomatoes, the problems with tomatoes is that you got one season. With a crop like lettuce, it's 52 weeks a year, right? So, and I would say that we have a very similar climate as you guys. I would say you guys probably have, it's very hot, it's very humid. You guys get cold enough where if you don't have tunnels, you're toast, right? So those are the challenges that we face that if you guys could really overcome those challenges and obstacles, it can really help you with cash flow. So you're going to get sick of me talking about cash flow, but farmers aren't talking about money enough. Like, you have to make money. And believe me, with this farm right here, I could drop $1 million in infrastructure today, not more acreage, just upgrading, making my working conditions for my team better. Like, a farm needs a lot of money, right? And so there's no end to that. So, because the more money you invest into your farm, the easier farming gets. A lot of time, if you're into, I would say anything past year 5, if farming is not getting easier, it's most likely either a cash flow problem or an infrastructure problem. There's 100 other problems that could be associated with that too. But a lot of farmers who tell me, have been farming for 10 years, and I still feel like it's harder and harder each year. And those are the guys who are bootstrapping their farm. Like, put some money into your farm and make it easy. Farming, we farm 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Like, my team, it's a 40-hour week. They're not working more than that unless they really want to. So, but that takes money. And it takes time, and it takes a deliberate plan and then executing that. So lettuce can make all that happen very, very quickly. And you can either, and the great thing about now is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I think after this morning, you're going to have some really good tools for you to go and apply to your farm plan this year and make some serious changes. Some of these changes is not, you don't need money, you just need to work a little bit differently than what you did last year. So that's what we're going to really get into. All right, so there's really 10 key principles that I really like to really focus on. And that is propagation, vital. There is a considerable amount of emails I get from growers who just simply can't get a healthy transplant consistently, right? Soil fertility. This is a massive one. The amount of farmers who do not take a soil test and don't have a soil consultant is astounding. A lot of your soil problems can be fixed simply by hiring someone who is smarter and more knowledgeable than you. I still have one. Like, I'll never be a soil scientist because I want to be a farmer that makes money from my farm, not measuring soil data. Weeds kill your farm. It did mine for many, many years. And I'm going to show you guys some pictures that will blow you away. The amount of weeds that we used to propagate. I wish we could find a market for these suckers. Water. Massive deal. Even though in this kind of climate, we do get water, it's not consistent enough. So it's either too much or it's not enough. So water is a big deal. The farmers who tell me that they just rely on nature to water their lettuce, they don't have lettuce every single week. Like, you need water. Pest. These are brutal, especially right now. Anybody here have lettuce in the winter in tunnels growing right now? Any of you guys have aphids right now? Or have just a little bit of pressure? Yep. So there's nothing more devastating and heartbreaking than you nailed your planting plan. You had beautiful heads of lettuce out there, and then all it takes, at least on my farm, is 5 days. The time you see that first aphid, you got 5 days. You better do something about it, or else that crop will be ruined. Disease is really, really tough. Diseases is one of the, I would say, of all the challenges I face today, it's still one of these problems that are just, it keeps me on my toes, and it keeps me humbled. So disease is a massive, massive deal. When to plant. So if you don't have lettuce right now, it's most likely because you missed your planting date, right? And so if you want to have lettuce from December, January, February, especially March, knowing when to seed and when to transplant is crucial. And season extension. I've talked a good bit about it, and I'll cover this in detail. But man, if you can extend the season, either by bringing to market earlier or extending the season, and best yet is having it in the wintertime when no one else has it. In my opinion, that fall, winter, and springtime, if I didn't have full-time employees, I would consider only farming the fall, winter, and spring. So it's just there's less pests, there's less weeds, it's not hot. Right now is a really fun time to be out in tunnels right now, not in July or August. And then packing is really a big deal because packing can make or break how much sales you can generate. And then sales. If you can't sell this at a price point that keeps you in business, you're growing glorified compost, which is great for the earthworms, but you will be out of business. You have to have sales. And you have to be very practical and deliberate about sales. I look at sales, which we'll talk further in the end. Sales to me is warfare. Like if you're not going to war every day with sales, you're going to be struggling. Like you have to be very aggressive, really making sure that your sales are happening. And if they're not happening, you need to have a plan on making sales happen. For me, I have a lot of motivation because I do have a large family, and they eat so much food. And so it does help to have hunger, like real hunger of like, my kids want to eat, they want to go places, they want to go to Alaska, they want to go to Thailand last, and so that definitely helps, as a provider, I'm driven to provide for my family. Once you know your why, your sales will become a lot more easier to pay attention to because you realize if you don't make those sales, you got some disappointed faces to look at every day. So having that why is important. We're going to dive into all these things this morning, as much as we can, as much as we can. All right, let's get started with the very first thing about production. Lettuce varieties is so important. It's really everything. And this is one of the things that we had to really be aggressive on because lettuce varieties come and go. They're not there forever, right? I've grown some varieties that over the years, even the genetics, I'm not a plant scientist, but we know, and my team can vouch for this, like there's some specific varieties that used to dominate in production. And now, actually last year, we actually cut them out because they were not the same. So varieties is everything. So what this is here is this is kind of like a good foundation of my current variety list that is really doing well. Really, really doing well. Now, this is going to change next year. So be mindful of this. If you guys were to come back to another class next year, I guarantee you that this will change. They'll be like, make up your mind. I said, well, I'd love to. But we do a lot of trials for our farm. We're looking at, taste. We're looking at flavor. What do customers buy? There's a lot of things we're looking at here. So on this list of varieties, one of the first things that I do kind of look at first before deciding what to grow is who are you going to sell this to? So if you look here, I have two different kinds of green leaves. I have Muir, which it does very, very well all year, but it's a small, you guys know, it's a smaller kind of more compact head, which fits really nicely into clamshells for grocery store sales. That's really, really nice. Perfect. Farmer's market, not so much. Tropicana is, if any of you guys have grown Tropicana, that thing is massive. And it just won't fit into a clamshell. It just doesn't work. And at a market, people love it because they do feel like they're getting more lettuce per bag, right? And it fits into a bag nicely, or you can sell it loosely. We've done it both. So again, it really does matter who you're selling this lettuce to. For my red variety, currently it's New Red Fire. Cherokee's been a really good one in the past, but we've really settled on New Red Fire for our current customer base. For romaine, which is really one of the hardest lettuce types to grow. Like, you really have to have, your soil has to be supercharged with potassium and nitrogen and have a lot of organic matter. And there's some other tricks and trade that we'll get into later. But when it comes to the romaine, Salvius is really my go-to. It's just every year, every trial we do, it's just it stands out by many, many different points. And then for Panisi, for the Bib kind of oak leaf type, we like to grow Panisi. That is our farmers market's favorite type of lettuce. It's a hit and miss in the winter in the summertime, but we can still get a good enough price for it that it's still worth growing in the summertime. One thing I did not put on here, and that is for our butter, we're using Adriana, which is a really nice head. Again, it's a hit and miss in the summertime, but we can charge enough for that butter that it does make it worth that extra effort into growing. If you have a market for grocery stores like we used to have, that Adriana is really a great variety for those lettuce shell clams for grocery stores. All right, next is propagation. So this is there's going to be a lot of things that you guys are going to be like, what in the world is he talking about? Why is he doing this? This is going to be one of them. All right, and I'm going to explain, and I'm going to be very careful not to tell. There's going to be some things that I'm going to strongly encourage you guys to consider, and then there's going to be some things that I'm going to tell you what works excellent for me and my farm. So we do P200s. This is a very small cell. It really is. But here is why I'm using that. One, it saves a lot of, if you're doing a lot of transplants each week like we are, you're going to need a big greenhouse. You really are. And what we have found is that the root balls in this cell fills up very fast. So you can see that laser. You can see this root ball right here. All right. So I pull that up by the tops. There was no fidgeting with the cell. There was no dibbling through the bottom. I just picked it up, right? And so what we used to do with like a bigger cell trays is that, man, we have to put them upside down and fiddle with it, and just a lot of time was wasted trying to get those plugs out. So we just found in our system that my 5-year-old son could pull up the tops, pull it up, and put it in the dibbled hole. Just easy. Pull, drop, pull, drop. That works for us. It's also very cheap. I don't know the current price, but I think they're like 50 cents a sleeve. They'll last for years. So for me, there's other areas of the farm that needs money to be spent in other systems and tools, which we'll get into. This is not, I have not found if you spend money in a transplant tray, it's not going to make me more money at the end of the day. Other things will, but for me, that is not. So the P200 really works, saves a lot of space. It's fast in our current system. And as you can see, I took this picture Monday. This is Monday. Yep. So this was, that cell was part of this. I just pulled it up, and it's done. So I'm going to kind of show you guys a video on this process, because this is the foundation. If you're going to be doing transplants, there's two things you need to have. You need to either outsource this to another grower, which if you're short on cash and you have a friend who can grow plants, it would be better for you to spend money buying transplants from a farmer friend, spend money in some of these tools that I'm going to show you, or a cat tunnel, right? Then spending money, like in my current greenhouse, I spent $50,000 on that thing. But that was after growing for 10 years. Like, if you were to see my old greenhouse, what we did, like it was a 20 by 40, just a hoop, and we played Tetris every single day. Like my farm manager literally would spend an hour every day moving plants outside to make room. I mean, it was a nightmare. But, we struggled for a few years because it was working, sort of. I mean, we were getting good quality transplants. It was just taking us a lot of time to do it. So it became very apparent that our pain point to solve for that season was we needed a greenhouse. We wanted to get into transplant cells again, which we used to do back when we first started. So if you're strapped on cash, I would highly recommend outsourcing this to another grower until you can afford the space. Save that infrastructure money, because you can drop, even on a decent prop house, you could very quickly, between heaters and all that soil, you could drop 5, 10K on a small 16-foot wide by 20-foot long, greenhouse that's properly ventilated, properly heated. It will make you money, but if you're starting out, there's things you can do around that. If you want to go this route, here is the main system that I'm using for transplants. P200, period. We spend money on good, high-quality soil. That's really, really important. I used to mix my own, and I could just never figure out the whole Elliott Coleman recipe. I went, you know what? I'm going to pay someone else to do it because I want to farm, and I'm losing money by trying to do whatever he's doing. So I spend money on good quality soil. I have a good roller dibbler, which I'm going to show you guys. I'm using high-quality seed. So I'm not buying seed for the year. I'm buying seed, lettuce seed, maybe every 2 months. I like fresh seed. We keep it in a freezer when it does get to the farm, which I'll show you guys a picture of that here in a bit. Buying good seed is, don't look for the cheapest, look for the best. Because when you get going on the succession flywheel, you can't afford, you thinking you're gonna save a half a cent on a seed when that could have been a potential $3 sale. Like you're focusing on the wrong thing. At least that's what I found for myself. We use a drop seeder. We used to seed by hand, one little seed at a time, doing 200. Now we use a drop seeder. Click, done. Like I did a farm masters workshop last week, and people were just like, they had no idea that this tool was even on this planet. It'll change your world in the propagation world. We then coat our seeds with vermiculite, just a really light layer. That helps with mold and disease. Also just keeps those seeds more hydrated. This time of the year, we can get weeks where it's just very, very cloudy, and we can get a lot of mold, and just a lot of funky things can happen to plants in a greenhouse. So vermiculite just helps. It's just a crop insurance for us. And then germination chamber. How many farmers in here have a germination chamber? I mean, you know, it's hard to imagine life before having one of these things, and you don't need to spend a lot of money. So that is really the basic things you need. Obviously you need a heater and other things. That's pretty real. But these are the small details that makes a big difference. We do not skip in all those items that I have there. We do not skip. Every one of those, we make sure that we have in stock, that everything is working correctly, and that is available at the time that we need it. So if we're seeding, we need to make sure that that germination chamber is available and open. We're not going to, we'll just try to put it underneath the bench. No, don't do it. Maybe it will that one time, but when you want consistent, reliable germination and cash flow every single week, there's just things we go, it's not worth skipping the step. We have it. Why skip it? And again, the reason why we're making the money we're doing is because we don't skip weeks. Like, I have a team, they have families, they're hungry too. And so, you know, we all want a weekly paycheck. And so having systems in place to make sure that everyone gets a weekly paycheck will really help catapult your farm further than you ever thought it could be. All right, so those of you who have not seen a P200 before, that's kind of what it looks like. We do have those 10-20 carrying trays at the bottom. They have drain holes, but that is a 5-week-old transplant. It's about 1 week behind in the wintertime. We don't have any artificial lighting. It is on the south side of the greenhouse, but that's what it looks like at 5 weeks, planted in, I guess that would be the second week of December, I think. And that's what it looks like after about a week of seeding. Now you can hand seed this, because a drop seeder will cost you between $300 to $400. So again, a lot of these tools that I'm going to show you, you're not going to be able to get this first year, and that's fine. But here's a good principle that I like to follow, because I'm going to show you a lot of things that I think by the end of it, you could be very overwhelmed and go, my goodness, I'll never get there. So every single week, me and my team, we're trying to solve one pain point every single week. And we'll do a big pain point once a year. So sometimes, though, those pain points can be solved by simply time, project. Oftentimes, unfortunately in farming, a lot of pain points can be solved by money. But sometimes simply changing a system can make all the difference in the world. So when you're growing and you're trying to improve your systems, think about, you have your weekly task, but think about, is there one pain point that I could change this week? What would that be, right? It could be as simple as, like, you know what? In our first year, we were washing literally in the open air in the mud. Literally in the mud. And so the next year's like, you know what? We're doing this on crates. Like, I'm going to go to some warehouses and find me some crates. And so again, those, like, it's very small, but that incremental solving pain points week after week will result in a farm like what we have today. So once you get where you're having consistent production, then investing in a drop seeder is a really good way to go. So this is a attendee from last week's workshop, and this is his first time using one. So he's kind of covering the tray with soil, any excess. He's kind of scooping off the top. This is a roller dibbler that a guy 3D printed for me. All right, so there's your indentions. It's perfectly, the perfect depth, and it's all centered. And so we use pelleted seed, which is a clay-based coating. He's getting all the seeds in the holes that are off-lined from the big drop hole. On this hand, he's going to push it in. Can I watch that? This is his first time, so the more you do it, the faster you'll get. But you can kind of see how the seeds are offset. He's getting that lined up. He just dropped it. Done. He just planted 200 of those in like literally a second. It's like, what? Did I really do it? So it's pretty incredible. So we seed 120 microgreen trays with this thing. Thousands and thousands of lettuce transplants. We do a lot of transplanting in the summertime. We now do this for everything. Kale, like I was very hesitant on the kale and chard because I've just always grown in big transplants. And 2 years ago, I told my farm manager, I said, Judah, just try one bed with P200s. I'm like, oh no, this is not going to work. It's going to fry. You know, it gets planted in the field in August for fall and winter harvest. And side by side, for whatever reason, those P200s outperformed a bigger cell tray. And so now, I mean, the only thing we're using a big cell for is tomatoes. You can see tomatoes behind Dirk there. They're about to go in the tunnel next week. That's the only thing. So everything across the board is that P200. Occasionally, we'll play around with some herbs, bigger cell. But we've just streamlined where it's just all the same. And so we can get, we hired a girl from Farmer's Friend, and after about a month, she can almost do, she's probably doing 175 trays total between transplants and micros in about 4 hours. Where before, it would easily have taken us possibly 2 days to do that much work by hand. So again, sometimes if you're like, you know what, I need to hire someone to work in the greenhouse for 2 days, a $400 tool can save you a lot of time. Germination chamber. Okay, so this is a working refrigerator that I bought from a restaurant that went out of business in 2020. And I put a Inkbird controller. So I believe that's a $30 controller, or it was when we bought it. And if you look here, there's a crock pot that's plugged into the heating side, and my working refrigerator is plugged in to the cooling side. And then you can set the temperature to whatever temperature you want, and then that controller will signal, hey, let's turn on the heat, whatever our heat source is. In our case, I stole a crock pot from my wife's kitchen when she wasn't looking and put it in the bottom there. And then the refrigerator is plugged into the cooling element. Now, you don't have to have a commercial refrigerator like this. We just did it because we were going through one a year. And we just needed more space. And I found it for a really, really good deal. And so we're like, you know what? Done. So you could take an old, you can use a freezer. You can use a refrigerator. It can be old. And you can retrofit it for the Inkbird. I mean, within 2 hours, you can have a old working refrigerator freezer and turn that into a germination chamber. The one thing I like about that crock pot is it keeps the humidity in that space. I don't try to control the humidity. It is what it is. But most of the time, it's 100%. This has been really important for us because in May, it's not uncommon for us to have our last frost the first week of May. And then a week later, probably very similar to you guys, it's in the 90s. And so we've just found over the years, having a consistent climate controlled tool like this, it's been really beneficial. There's a lot of things in farming that is out of our control, right? We can't control the market. We can't control the weather. We can't control, our suppliers jacking up the price 300% on our supplies. There's a lot of things we just can't control. So anytime that we as farmers can control the outcome of a product, it's a really good idea to do that. And oftentimes, they're a lot more affordable than what you think. You can buy this for $12,000, or you can rig it up for less than $1,000. And if you have a refrigerator that's working, you could buy an old junk one for $150 off of Facebook Marketplace, $30 controller, and you're controlling this one little aspect of your farm system that can cause a lot of pain and financial heartache. I cannot recommend this enough. So this is one of the few things that I'm going to just say, if you can get one of these this year, do it. Now, maybe you have this perfect basement that's working out for you. If whatever working is working, that's fine. But if you struggle with consistent germination of seedlings, please consider this on your to-do list this season. It will bring you a lot of joy at the end of the year when you saw a 25% increase in your profits because you had transplants that look like this every single week of the year. This is what you want. And that germination chamber, it won't be the only thing that will help you get there, but it can be a big part of it. She's like, that's where that crock pot is. I'm looking at my time here. I'm just making sure I'm got time here. Okay. So that's what it looks like on. So it's in the germination chamber for about 48 hours. And what we do is whether the seedlings, whether we see them pop or not, they come out of the germination chamber 48 hours. And typically within 24 hours, 12 to 24 hours, they're going to green up and look like that. So that's vermiculite. That's a coarse grade vermiculite because medium, for some reason, is not available this year. I don't know why that is, but that's working just fine for us. All right. Okay, so the next part of this. Generally speaking, from right about now or so, for us in our greenhouse, the one thing about our greenhouse is that we positioned it where it had the most sun on the farm. And what we found is that our planting dates were a lot more regulated because we didn't have any shade on our greenhouse. Our other one that had shade, we did find, as you can see up there, like if we were to seed February 5th, we saw, it was 43 days till it was time to plant. Now where our greenhouse is, it's really 30 days. So this is kind of, that red section really represents this area of time where it's going to be a hit and miss depending on where your greenhouse is located and how cold it was and how much shade it was. So what I've done here, and in your handbook that Ahava passed out to you guys, is this planting plan. This is not going to be your plan. And in fact, our plan does change every year. But having a place to start can be really, really helpful. So if you have a good benchmark, especially on that red zone where it's just kind of like, it's a hit and miss. We also have on the opposite side, which is even more important, when you want to hit the fall and winter harvest dates on. sometimes those planting dates are 2 days apart. Believe it or not. Like if you plant a lettuce transplant in the open, in a field, let's just say at the end of October, and you plant 5 days later, another batch, that could be a 2 to 3 week difference of maturity. Believe it's pretty crazy because of that first planting you did could have had a 5-day jump on really sunny weather. It could be warm. Our daylight is drastically going down. It's getting cooler, more overcast days. All those nuanced differences in relation to time of day length and temperature makes a big difference on when you can harvest. So we have, I've been collecting data since 2000 and I believe it's 12. This is when I realized, oh my goodness, man, I'm just guessing every year. Forget this, right? And I'll try to use a Coleman sheet, and that was just way, way off of where I was. And so I just went, you know what? I'm going to do a bunch of plantings in September and October, and I'm going to keep really good records, and I'm going to see what works. So in that booklet, we have kind of my plan. And if you look here, I have what I planned, and then I have what I did, because there's a big difference between what you think you're going to do and what you actually do. At least that's the way it goes on my farm. And now, what's great now is I've actually got a new system called Notion that we developed that my team does all this for me. So like anytime they seed, they either go to the computer, they log when they seeded it, they get to log when they harvested, what bed, what fertility we put on there, so we have more information logs than we know what to do with. But the more you keep track of what you seeded, when you transplanted it, and when it was harvested, it will really give, that is really going to be the only way that I know of to get you a more accurate planting plan for you and your microclimate and your farm. Sheets will get you kind of close, but you just got to keep really good track every single year. I hate collecting data in computers, so as soon as you can get, for me what I did is as soon as I had a good plan and benchmark, that was one of the first things I handed off. Hey, I'm sick of doing this. I'm paying you to do this job. So since we've been doing that, we've been able to, every year we'll kind of correct, hey, all right, let's move this over. We're kind of seeing this trend, because every year is different from the next, right? So there was this point in 2010, the first year we farmed, I swear that was the hottest summer. I don't remember a summer that hot. And then 2 years later, it was so cold in the summertime for us that we could not even grow okra. And then it went back up again. And so it makes no sense. There's no trend of cooling or warming. It's going to do whatever it's going to do. So by keeping track, it just helps us know, okay, well, we do kind of see where over time we're seeing a trend where it looks like we need to be doing more succession plantings in September because we can't predict. Who would have predicted it was going to be that cold in December, but now it's one of the warmest Januaries that I remember. So what we found is that by having multiple plantings in September, should be in the next one here. There we go. So the more that we can have a lot more transplanting going on, the end of August, September, and even October, the better we're going to hit our target harvest dates. So the end goal is we want to harvest every single week of the year. In 2016, I got my first contract for 100 pounds of salad mix a week through the winter time. It was a restaurant contract. And it was a massive deal for me. So it's man, I can actually hire someone just to do my lettuce planting plan. Because a lot of times when I failed at having to harvest, I could always track it by to either I missed a planting date, a seeding date, maybe I had to take a kid to the doctor, and so I wasn't there to get the bed prep. Whatever the case was, it was always an inconsistent lack of making sure these items happened. So the first thing I did with that contract is I hired someone just to make sure that the seeding, bed prep, planting, harvesting happen for lettuce. That was his only job he had. And everything else was just gravy. And so that's kind of how I made this transition from a family farm, because once we hit number 4, and we wanted to have a few more kids, it was very clear to us that my wife could not homeschool, feed kids, pack, greenhouse, plant with me, and regain her sanity. So we realized that, and I couldn't do it all either, right? And then, in 2012, I was doing a lot more speaking at universities, and it was just, we couldn't do it all, nor do we want to. I'm not 25 anymore. So by having my lettuce system in place by 2015 is when I had lettuce year-round available for sale and have never missed a week since 2015. So since we have this schedule in place, I just need someone to do it, right? But I need cash flow, right? So there comes this point where you have to kind of take that leap of faith, hire that person, and once you do, and that person can execute your plan for your farm, things really start taking off. And then it's like, the next year, can you get a second one? A lot of this depends on what your goals are. One thing that drives me is, I grew up in a broken home, which I'm sure many of you guys have done as well. And so I wanted to kind of break that cycle. And so for me, in order to do that, I needed to make sure I had time and energy to be not just around the house sitting on the couch, but where I had time. Hey, if it's a Thursday afternoon and there is some really cool animal exhibit going on, my boys are really into snakes. So anytime there's a kind of snake show or a Lego conference, they're like, "Daddy, we're going." So I wanted to be around. I'm by nature a workaholic, but my children want my time. They don't need my money. What they want is my time. So I'm trying to craft a farm. I'm kind of getting off subject here. Bear with me. But I wanted to make sure I created a farm that would give me that ability to make a good living, but also give my children the things that I wanted growing up, right? And so that is a very fine balance of this whole work-life, family-life balance. There's actually no such thing as balance. It's more of the pursuit of balance. So it's recognizing, wow, the farm's not making money. I better, all right, kids, I'm gonna have to work, an extra couple hours a day to get things back on track. Or my kids are just begging to tell me everything they're doing, so I'm gonna take off work a few hours early, right? So but it's being able to have the freedom to do those things, right? To recognize where things are off balance and have the freedom to attend to those things that do need your attention. So I don't believe in a true work-life family balance. What I believe is being aware of what needs your attention and making sure that you have the time, freedom, and resources to give those needs your time and attention. Time is the most precious and valuable resource that we have. All of our days are numbered. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And time is one of those things that we'll never get back. So hopefully you don't regret giving me your time this morning. So let's carry on. All right. Soil health and fertility. My goodness, guys. This is one thing that does not take a lot of money. It does not take a lot of your money. It will take some of your time. The great thing about a soil consultant is that you can take a soil test, which costs under $100, and that soil test will give you so much information about the health of your soil and what it needs to grow a good, healthy crop. So I would say, before you go buy a germination chamber and a drop seeder, take a soil test, find out what's going on. Now maybe you're already growing great crops and this is not a problem. But if you're struggling, like say in the summertime, you just can't quite seem to get your head lettuce to head up nicely. Knowing what you have in your soil is going to give you it's going to give you a jump start into knowing what direction to go into your soil. And this notion, I do have a picture of compost that I made, but I actually don't believe in just applying compost for compost's sake. Not all compost is created equal. And so I'm not sure where this has come from, but there's so many people who just believe the answer to all your soil problems is more compost. I would actually say, unless you know what your compost is made from and what kind of quality is, it's one of the most damaging things you can do to your soil. Now, I know it sounds like blasphemy saying this to a group of no-till farmers here, but I know too many farmers who counted on fertility from the compost, and the compost was contaminated, and it just ruined their farm for that season. So it could be a negative, not a positive. So if you're going to use compost alone, at least test it to make sure that it's worth putting on your soil. The one thing about farming is that your soil will make or break your production. Really good night. Okay. Okay. So I just realized the time here. Okay. So do not apply compost unless you know it's worth putting on your soil. Get that soil consultant. They're not expensive. When you get a soil consultant, there's a few things that I would warn against. You need to find someone who will listen to you. Listen to your goals. And at least in my experience, I've hired a lot of soil consultants, and all of them disagree with each other. And so this has been a thing for me. So I'm like, well, if you guys are science-based, then how is this even possible? So there's lots of ways to approach things, and this just goes to show that life is very complex and very nuanced. In the end of the day, find you a soil consultant who will listen to you, who understands your goals, what you're trying to do, and who will work within your budget. Someone who preferably understands your climate. If you consult with a farmer in the Pacific Northwest and you're in the Mid-South, you will probably run into some problems. Soil testing is really important. I take several a year. I like to have like a mineral pack. Once you get that soil test done, that just helps remineralize your farm. I am a big fan of compost. I used to do 2 inches a year, but I made my own compost and I even had it tested. Crop rotations is really, really important. And I don't do cover crops anymore. I want to. That's my newest dream for a new farm that can have time. But if you have the time and space for that, I would definitely highly recommend you go in that option. Michaela, I'm going to go 10 till 10 on this one. All right. And then fertilizer. Just making sure that you have a really good fertilizer program. Again, I don't want to tell you what I'm doing to my soil because I really want you guys to get your own soil consultant and go through this process yourself. Because if you do what I'm doing, it could negatively affect the result on your farm. Everyone's farm is different. I always say a farm is like a fingerprint. There's no two farms alike. And so, just like if you were going to go to a doctor, they would want to test your blood to see what is going on in your body. That's what a test is like for your farm soil. Know what's going on in your farm. Really develop a respectful relationship with it. Because what you do to your soil will impact your farm for years and years to come. All right, so when it comes to fertility, I will say, if there's any product that I would recommend, I use a lot of products, and I'm trying all kinds of snake oil stuff every single year. But I'll tell you a really quick story about this product here. So it's virtually impossible to grow kale in West Tennessee in the summertime. This was recommended to me by a soil consultant, which I still respect to this day. I don't really use them anymore for various other reasons. But I was using this for tomatoes. And I was like, you know what? I would love to be able to grow kale in the summer. I think I could just, I could kill it, and market. No one else has it. So I applied Fusion Veg on a bed of kale. I seeded this bed of kale in January. I transplanted it in the open field. This was before I had tunnels. So I think I did this in 2017, I believe. And it's in the open field. Took the cover off in March. And I sprayed this product on that kale once a week. And it kept cranking kale until September, through the summertime. And I couldn't believe it. It was tender, and it was sweet. And it was like, and everything else, all my other kale was bolted and gone. Usually by June, for us, it's toast. And the only reason why we pulled it up is because we were sick of looking at it, up this kale plant that was like literally this high. And our August transplanted kale was ready for harvest. And of course, nothing as great as beautiful, the new plant.
Excuse me, everyone. I'm sorry for the interruption this morning. There is a vehicle outside in the parking lot, a Dodge Charger red in the handicap parking, and the car has been running for about 3 hours. We were just wondering if anybody in here...
That's mine.
...has a Charger, you could come outside. Thanks. Yeah, right?
Sorry about that, guys. All right. Where were we? Okay, yeah. Kale, that's right. Okay, kale. All right. All right. So I was absolutely amazed. I thought, well, and it was a hot summer. Like this was not a mild summer whatsoever. So the next year, I think I didn't use it at all. I was trying some other products, and just kale was dismal. Then the next year, I was like, you know what? Okay, this seems very interesting. I'm gonna go back to this product. Again, I'm using probably 20 products, different kinds of things. People are sending me all the time. And so I went back to this, and again, just cranked till like the end of August. And so then I started to put this on some lettuce, and I just saw just more vigorous. It just really, and this is all foliar feeding, by the way, so spraying on. Now, you can fertigate this as well. So I have seen this thing do really incredible, amazing things. The analysis on this, on how much you should put, I'm going to leave that up to you and your soil consultant. All right? I didn't say this, but I use a cup per gallon on my farm. I mean, a cup per tankful. So that's going to be about 5 times the suggested rate, what they say and what your consultant will say. But that's what helps. I mean, we're getting, especially in the summertime, when there's a lot of stress with heat. Right, right now we're back way off. But anyways, number one, we use a lot of different things. But if I were to only pick one product to use on my farm, it would be this. And this is what we use. So we used to use a sprayer, just a regular traditional sprayer, pump sprayer, that in 30 minutes you just think your arm's gonna fall off. Forget that, man, that's, So this is a battery-powered blower, so it's like a mister. It's very quiet, and what I found is instead of spraying, you're basically fogging your plant. So it's wrapping your solution underneath the leaves. It's around the stems. You're getting really, really good coverage. And I find that you don't need to use as much product with the fogger. It's very, very efficient. They're fairly pricey. By the way, all this, if any of you guys are on my Living Farm course, on that product catalog, all the stuff can be is on that site. So this is what we like to do. Go back. One thing, one note. Okay, one note is if you have a hard time doing this consistently, hire someone to do it for you. Weeds. Let's talk about some weeds, guys. And you know what? I am going to go over on part one, and I apologize, but I'll cut it short on the other ones. I promise. Okay, weed control. This is one thing. Every spring, I think, so we have really, really heavy, tight clay soil. So when it rains, you're looking at a good 3 to 4 days for it to dry out, maybe even longer. Like you're not getting out there the next day. So I would always think every spring we're just gonna, we'll get out there earlier. We just never could get out there. And so this, unfortunately, is what my farm most of the time looked like in the early spring. Let me go back to that. There's definitely a lot of ways to do this. People use tarps, flame weed, which we used to do, which we got rid of that tool. And then there's our traditional long-handled weed cultivation. The thing with the weeding by hand is that is, to me, time we do not have. And when it's 100 degrees out there, how many of us just want to be out there in June or July at 2 p.m. cultivating weeds? Most of the time, we're just going to let them go. Like, that's the reality. We're going to let them go. And so, what I found is that my team hates to pull weeds. They just don't like it. Like, I've tried, like even now, like we have some fields that just don't have very much beds. Like, no, we're not weeding. Like, we ain't doing that. Past 12 o'clock, we're like, and so anyways, doing what I found on our farm, because we're kind of around some hay fields, and with our hot, humid climate, we have to cultivate every single bed twice a week. So you imagine 85 100-foot beds. They all have to be done twice a week. If not, the weeds will get out of hand. And so it was just too much work for us to do. So we did landscape fabric. I remember when we were doing tomatoes back in 2013, I thought, the paths of tomatoes, those weeds would always get this high. And when you're harvesting, you get so everywhere. And so I thought, this year I'm gonna keep track of it. I'll get a line trimmer out there. It's just, after 6 weeks of rain, you can't get out there. The weeds are back to this tall. So I tried to do landscape fabric, I think in 2013 or maybe 14. And that was actually really amazing. Just getting the paths covered, where you have a clean surface where you can put baskets on, made all the difference in the world. And then one of the best farmers in Mid-South area, Mark Kane, I saw him use fabric for the beds. Like, man, that is, and he was laying down with a tractor. Like, man, that's really amazing. And so the next year I tried on a few beds, and I was really convinced that this was going to be a bigger part of operation. So this is probably one of the most hated things we do on our farm. Not in our farm teams. They're like, Ray, if you get rid of landscape fabric, we're going somewhere else. But from the outsider's perspective, this is the most hated thing about our farm, and I understand. It's plastic, and it doesn't look as good as a beautiful cultivated bed of lettuce. But either does this. This doesn't look good either. And this is demoralizing, crippling for a team. Like, try to go harvest heads of lettuce around those weeds. They'll be out there for hours, I burned out so many people because my farm, I just could not keep track of the weeds with our weather. So this is what we went to. And I am going to try to talk you guys into trying one bed, side by side, fabric and no fabric. So if you'll bear with me, and I understand why this is so unappealing. The biggest con that I see with this is that it is plastic. right? But we do live in a world, like, all of our clothes are made with some kind of plastic. The cars we drive, our appliances. So I'm going to kind of show you where I feel like this has helped our farm and our soil and our crops more now than ever. And I'm going to also just let you know, if you think this is insane, I understand. I did too at one time. So you're not alone. But I'm going to try to convince you otherwise in the next 10 minutes. All right, let's get into it. So when you're starting out, or even now, you want to cover as much soil as possible, right? Because you want to reduce the amount of time that you're pulling weeds. Like I said, no one wants to or is. The reality is very few people are weeding their farms in the summertime. And I know, because when I visit them, I can tell. No one is weeding at their farm, right? So it's best to be in reality, and when it gets to summertime, it ain't happening. All right, so here is the things that I personally have found to really like over the last 6-8 years of doing this. It retains moisture. It's really incredible. If you do side-by-side comparisons with fabric and no fabric, how much less water you need if you use fabric. It keeps the soil cooler in the summertime. And I'm going to show you with a digital thermometer how much cooler it keeps soil versus outside bare soil. It keeps soil warmer in the winter. So we did a trial once where we did 2 beds of Salanova, landscape fabric in a tunnel. 2 beds Salanova, planted the same day, bare soil. The fabric, the lettuce that was planted in the fabric was ready for harvest 2 weeks earlier in the wintertime. That is not a small difference, guys. 2 weeks earlier. That's massive. Keeps microbes and earthworms more active at the surface of the soil. Lettuce has a shallow root system. So we are trying to cultivate microbes and earthworms. And we need them up close to the surface of the soil so they can help us cycle and feed our roots more nutrients. So you need your living soil microbes closer to the surface. If you have bare soil, they ain't nowhere near the surface. I guarantee you they're nowhere near that. If you look at the temperature for microbes and earthworms, when you have when your soil is 120 degrees, the surface of it, there ain't no earthworms close. But if you got fabric, very oftentimes we can pull that fabric back and we can see earthworms and other living organisms. You will not see that in a natural bare soil. Anytime you see bare soil, most of the time is in the desert. Soil likes to be covered. Now, you could do leaves and hay, absolutely. And for my next hobby farm, I'll most likely do that because I'd rather use straw. But on a high production farm like this, where we have 8-hour day, 5 days a week, this kind of makes the most practical sense. If you don't have tunnels, less compaction from heavy rain. We lost 2 inches of topsoil in 2019 when we had that 125 inches of rain. We lost all of our organic matter washed away. We had soil consultants come out, test it. They could not believe the amount of nutrients that was being leached by our rain. So that really, really does help it. It reduces leaching fertility. It keeps your lettuce clean. This is, so to be transparent, I farm 50-50 with my wife. She's in the patch shed. I was a massive fan of the paper pot planter because the time to save me. But she was having to wash, drain her bubbler 3 to 4 times per batch because it was so dirty. And I was seeing that it was our 20-minute savings in planting the bed was costing her 3 hours. And that's a big deal. Like she's a working mother that has kids that she's schooling and feeding. And so I recognize in her that she's like, you guys may like this, but you're killing me. And so we kind of looked at the data and went, you know what, you're right. So with this head lettuce, you can chop it. The bottom of the leaves are clean. There's a lot less disease by having clean lettuce. We sell to a market that we don't have to wash our produce. Now if it's visually muddy, we will because people buy with their eyes. But we legally do not have to wash lettuce. I was GAP certified in 2020, and they don't want you to wash lettuce. Because when you wash it, let's just say a bird poops on a head lettuce, that goes into the water, that's going to contaminate the whole batch. So on a food safety issue, the less you wash, the better. So if it's clean, what we're doing, literally, what we used to do is we would harvest, put in totes, the totes go to market. No post-harvest. Like, you know how we used to spend 50% of our time in the pack shed. Now we're spending about 25% of our time in the pack shed. Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I'm a terrible habit of walking around. Okay. Yes. Yes. Not side by side. We haven't done that yet. I am working on a farm like that where I can do a lot more trials. Because when I do trials, I'm losing money in my production. And so about 4 years ago, my wife said, "Stop losing money on all these trials." So, I would say because there's a lot of things we're doing with diseases, which we'll kind of get into. The biggest thing is our soil health. I would say disease, absolutely. Like we could do a side-by-side comparison probably, especially right now. Keeps lettuce clean, which I can't tell you guys how big of a deal. That may seem like a big deal to you guys, but not having to wash lettuce is pretty sweet. And if any of you guys have done, like my wife, she was washing 400 pounds of salad mix, thousands of heads of lettuce. Like, it's a lot, And when you go to bare soil, she was spending days and days, and all of a sudden she doesn't have to touch the head lettuce at all. Like, you talk about saving quality of life. Massive. No weeds. Did I mention no weeds? Like, no weeds. We did not weed that once. Okay? You have a very efficient built-in grid, right? So we try to do things because I have kids who like to help. So once you lay that fabric, which takes about 3 minutes to lay down a staple properly, then a child, like, he knows, like, there's a hole. Before it was just like, Ethan, there's the grid in the soil. Well, Daddy, I thought it was in the middle of the grid. Like, but so this here, it dumbs it down where anybody can do it. If you have a planting party, which I like to do in my live events, on my on-farm workshops, there's no worries. Like, nobody can mess up. And so it makes it easy. If you have a community garden and you want to get more people involved, do this. When you plant, the next thing we do? Harvest. There's nothing in between. It's nice. It's very, very nice. And we use drip tape on head lettuce. And so in the field, it would just blow away from the wind. The fabric keeps that drip tape in place. All right. There's never enough time with these things. Okay, so here's kind of our spacings here. Basic pattern, like this here. And then we just burn it. That's a 2 1/4 inch hole. It's very small. But we're using a dibbler on a drill, which is a pretty insane way to plant, but it's literally twice as fast as anything I've ever seen it, which was developed by my farm manager. Okay, so this is a temperature that we did in 2020, I believe. I do this every few years to just make sure that my measurements are accurate. So this was as you can see, this was on my green, outside of the greenhouse. It was the temperature was over 100 degrees that day. This was bare soil, guys, 139 degrees. Now, there's a good bit of organic matter, right? So we're not talking about lifeless soil there. The surface of the soil was 139 degrees. I think the data on earthworms is anything above between 88 and 91 degrees. I think earthworms can't live in that kind of soil. So they're gone. Like they're nowhere near to be found this temperature. So this was underneath shade cloth. okay? On top of fabric, 117. So the shade cloth really did help it. And that was soil under the fabric, all right? So there was no shade there. And I measured it right, I lifted up that shade cloth and measured it. And the surface of the soil was 83 degrees. So the bare soil near it was 139. And the soil underneath the fabric was 83 degrees. Now, this is what's really cool. I found this out later that if you measure the surface of the lettuce, oftentimes it's the same temperature as the soil. So what I'm finding now, I would love to get some university to help me with some more scientific data on this. A lot of this is kind of based on what is working for me on a high demand farm. I find that the temperature of the soil is critical for lettuce production. So I cannot skip over this part because I think this is really, really important. When we started growing romaine in fabric in the summertime is when we started to have better success during the summertime. It's keeping that soil surface cool. Now, this could be done with leaf, mulch, straw. It doesn't have to be landscape fabric. You need some kind of covering for the earth. It does not like to be naked. It wants to be clothed, right? Remember, any surface in nature that is not covered is usually rock or desert. We don't want that. We want life. You want earthworms and microbes at the surface, and you got to get it covered. Or at least as fast as possible. We do some things that it's bare soil, but that's because in 7 days it's going to cover the soil. This is what I found to work really well for us. Once you remove it, it's clean. And this is, open field, summertime. Don't recommend this now because of how much rain we've been getting. But this is what's possible by using fabric. And we did not have to cultivate this. We planted it. We made sure our water was running and working properly. And the next thing we do is we harvest clean head of lettuce that does not need to be washed. That is massive. Having clean produce is very, very important. So, what I did when I first got started, because it is definitely an investment into this fabric, is doing some comparisons really helped me. So I did 1 or 2 beds side by side with some others, and I just thought, my goodness, the plants look healthier. They're bigger. They're more shinier. They're clean. There's less disease. Never really saw the pest issue with fabric, but I wasn't also paying attention to that either. So anyways, this is kind of like, that's the goal, right? And there's a lot of things that need to happen between the seeding and this, ultimately into your checking account. All right. So irrigation is really, really important for us. You got to have water, but you cannot have too much. So this was an often sight of our farm. We're using a lot of drip tape for all of our head lettuce. When we're out in the field, we use wobblers, which I don't recommend if you have a lot of wind. And then in our tunnels, we're using all Netafim misters. And that is the end of part 1. Any questions? And then now is a good time for you guys to go to the bathroom break. I'll be on part 2 in about 5 minutes. I went a little over, I'm sorry, but we're not doing too bad. Say that question again.
Are your tunnels heated?
Okay. The question was, is the tunnels heated? My cat tunnels, my small ones, are not heated. But my greenhouse is, and I have 2 big high tunnels that are heated. Yes.
on your propagation chamber, it looked as, were you stacking your trays?
Yes, right on top of each other. Yep. Because they're seeds, and that's why we pull those trays out in 48 hours, so you don't get that stretching and legginess.
How long does the fabric last, and what does it cost per acre?
I have not had a fabric wear out yet. I'm going to say, depends how well you take care of it. If you were to tell me that I would have my fabric 20 years from now, I wouldn't be surprised. It lasts a very long time. Yes. Go ahead.
What is your water source? Like, do you have a
Well.
well? Oh, you're
Well.
on a well.
Yep.
Okay.
We're on a well.
So what do you suggest if you possibly don't have access to a well?
Then I would put in a reverse osmosis system. That's what I would do. Yep.
Your irrigation lines, how do you keep them pinned underneath the fabric? How far apart? And what do you do about mice? I've used plastic in a field before, and I have trouble with mice biting my line, having to pull it, have to repair lines all the time.
Yes. So we leave our lines kind of loose, not like wobbly loose, but on the very ends, we usually fasten with a stapler. Like you can kind of tie to a stapler, and that keeps it from moving around too much. And that fabric, once you put the fabric down, that fabric kind of helps press it down. Yep.
Rows, like, when you were showing that you had several rows of lettuce, you ran multiple lines?
I'm sorry. Yes. So it's 2 lines. I believe there are 14. That would be. What are they apart? I want to say they're 12 to 14 inches apart. But we have them on our header, and they're so in our tunnels. It's permanent irrigation. We're not moving irrigation around. It's nice. We do pull it up. So we'll kind of pull it up. Yeah, well, we won't pull it back. We'll just kind of put it on the path out of the way. And then we'll, amend our soil. Usually the next crop is overhead watering, like with our net emitters, right? And so not everything is drip tape, just fabric. So if we're doing like, which you'll see here in a minute, we do some bare, like if we do radishes or carrots, arugula, spinach, not spinach, like a direct seeded salad mix, that's bare soil. We're not using drip tape for that. What we're using is overhead knit misters. So oftentimes it's drip tape that gets put to a side. We'll do another planting, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, that drip tape will come back. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever tried any of the mini varieties from Johnny's?
Yes.
And do you not grow them for a reason? Because I've had some problems, particularly with the mini romaines. But they're very popular at the market.
Okay.
And so just wondered what your experience was with those mini varieties. Because they
Right.
say they're all season.
Yeah. So we trialed them for a wholesale account once. We don't have a market in our farmers market area yet. And we did it for like one spring, and it just never took off. So we just kind of never grew it because we didn't have a demand. But we did the 4x6 planting grid, which is 4 rows, 6 inches apart. So that kind of helps make that more of a compact, upright head. But I haven't done extensive research on the varieties. See which ones kind of work the best year round. Yep.
Sorry. So I enrolled in your class, and I set up a tunnel with your whole setup and everything. And I'm in Cincinnati, so we're not maybe quite as hot as you are, but
You're
I
hot.
still have a lot of problems with bolting.
Yes.
So do you also use shade cloth inside the tunnel to help with the temperature problems?
No. Okay. So I'm going to say if you're what varieties are bolted on you?
Well, mostly those mini varieties. So I've switched to, I'm
I
going to try
see.
some Salanovas this year. And I grow the Muir also. That one does very well.
Yeah.
So I would say mostly just, the minis. I don't grow full size
I see.
romaines or anything. They just don't sell where I am.
Right.
So I actually ended up putting shade cloth over the entire tunnel, just a 30%, and it did help.
Great.
But
Okay.
Wondered if you had any suggestions on how to mitigate some of that heat. Well, I guess using the cloth, maybe that would help.
I think it would. I really do. Because if you can get that surface of your soil below 90, it's going to help so much. I really think. And again, we had a hard time growing romaine until we grew that in fabric. And so I would say it'd be interesting to do a trial. Like, don't go all the way into fabric. Like, let's just say, are you in like a 50-foot tunnel? Is that what you are? Is your tunnel 50 foot or 100?
A 96.
Okay. So, if you could pull off a 25-foot bed with fabric just to like see, kind of curb that curiosity. Like, sometimes these things, it's the process of elimination. So it could be like, if I was on your farm and you had that kind of demand, I would try that. I would make sure my water was consistent, and I would be, because those romaines do take more potassium, so I would be either fertigating or foliar feeding Special K, which is the organic potassium from Blue Eating Gold, and I'd be using that Fusion Veg. That's what I would be doing. I don't know why, it just seems like romaine it needs a lot more food. And from my experience, it's a heavy feeder. I would say double normal green leaf has been my experience. Like, we really do special treatment for romaine to make it head up. So I think that may help. Yep, go ahead. We'll keep going until everybody's questions is answered.
Who'd you pick?
This lady here.
Okay.
You might have already said this, but are you selling each variety of head lettuce at the same price at the market, or are you changing your price based on the variety?
No, it's all the same. Yep, all the same.
Your irrigation water, you said you're using a well. Do you pH adjust that at all, or do you have any?
We do not. It just kind of is what it is. We've tested the water, and yeah.
Seems like I see a fluctuation. I've got a well water that in the winter here, my actual phosphorus goes really high, but in the summer it comes down. I haven't figured out why.
Interesting. So I haven't tested throughout the season. That'd be interesting trial to see. Right. Just going down the line.
Maybe you'll address this in part 2, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more about your actual transplanting process. You mentioned dibbler on a drill, and I'm curious also what your benchmark time is, what you expect it to take to transplant.
Okay.
it.
Yep. We're doing that next.
It will be in part 2?
Yep.
We love Salanova. Do you do Salanova at all?
So I do, but we're moving away from it.
Okay.
Slowly, because we're using the 5-row Jang cedar a lot more. Mainly because my team is with me year after year, and they're not getting younger, and so they enjoy any task to stand up. So we're kind of changing a little bit. I still like it, but not every variety of the Salanova is worth growing. So we're doing Sweet Green Crisp, Green Butter, Frizzy Go is the main 3 that we're doing right currently.
Push that 4 to 6, 4 by 6.
That's what we're doing, 4x6. Yep, and we can get between 100 to 180 pounds per bed, but we're just doing one cut.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One is the basic cost of the landscape fabric.
Yep.
And also where you mostly get your seeds from.
Yes, great question. So I get the landscape fabric from a company called Deerfield Supplies, and it's gone up some, but I believe it's $75 a roll, and it's a 4 by 300 foot roll. So you can get 3 pieces out of that roll. So it's about $25 per bed. But again, it's well worth the money. Now, on that, I'll make a note on the fabric, is that they are inconsistent in size, unfortunately. And I like to have a true 100-foot size, so I'm only getting 2 true 100-foot lengths. And then I have some leftovers, which I use for like my header and things. So, but if you're, if you're not too worried about being a little short, then you can get three pieces per roll. So about $25 a piece. And then my seeds are from Johnny Seeds or High Mowing. But I find Johnny Seeds to be higher quality, at least in my opinion. Like I tried High Mowing my first year of farming, and I couldn't get any of them to germinate. That's probably my setup, obviously, but Johnny Seeds is great.
Your dibbler,
Yes,
do you have a blueprint for that?
I don't. We are working on that. So I'm working on a machinist to kind of make me some more prototypes. But what we did is we took the dibbler. I should have included a picture on here. We took. Any of you guys familiar with a company called Two Bad Cats? All right, they have those roller dibblers. We took one of those metal dribblers and put that on a long threaded bolt. Cut the head off the bolt, stuck that into a drill, and voila, there's your dibbler. And so I don't have a picture of that process here, but what we're doing, and so my farm manager was, kind of overseeing this process, and he was just like, man, our fingers are getting tired. It's just, you're on your knees a lot. So he could dibble out 800 plants in like 5 minutes, just insane. And then it's done. And then literally what we're doing is we're taking that plant, we're dropping them in the hole and leaving them be. And then our watering is kind of watering in the gaps. We'll kind of get into that here in a bit. But I thought that was, my wife and I saw him and we're like, what is he doing? That is the dumbest, stupidest idea we have ever seen. And Ashley's like, I ain't paying him to drill in our soil. She does the book, so she's very mindful of who does what. So her and I went out there because, obviously we planned just us two for, 8 years before. And sure enough, we tried it. We're like, you know what? This looks dumb, but it sure is nice. Oh, that one. I'm sorry. No, I don't have plans for that. But he is selling those. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the actual, the roller dribbler. Any more questions?
So, Ray.
Yes.
You said you have 3 team members. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have one farm manager who kind of took my position on managing the farm, and then one pack shed manager, greenhouse manager, and then 2 people on production.
So, you said a 40-hour week. So, can you tell me how you're doing 3 markets?
Yes. Yep.
With
Yep.
40 hours?
So, my wife does the Jackson Farmers one. It's like 5 minutes. So we recently, so this really isn't public knowledge, but we lived in a yurt for about 5 years. We were hoping to move a lot sooner than we did, but we just couldn't find anything in the market, so everybody's moving from California. So we found a place in Jackson, about 40 minutes north. Happens to be 10 minutes away from the Jackson Farmers Market. So my wife does that with our boys. I'm doing the Franklin Farmers Market with Ahava and Asha, who's my oldest daughter. And then Judah just started doing the Memphis Farmers Market. So he's driving to do that one. And then we give him 20% of all those sales. Because that is, we've always had that as an option for our team members if they wanted to make more money. And so when it comes to farm field production, it's 40 hours, but he really wanted to pick up, he wanted to make more money. I mean, he's already making close to 30 an hour right now. Like, well, you're doing pretty well for a farmer in Tennessee, so what if you pick up a market? We'll give you 20%. Because, man, sign me up. So that's how we're doing that. And it does sound like a lot, but if any of you guys do retail, when our wholesale, I was giving away 30 to 50% of my retail sales by doing wholesale. So, You know, I'd rather have 200 customers than one big one. I've been burned. All right, one more.
Yes, I noticed that you guys burn for the landscaping fabric.
Yes.
Do you burn in place as?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, is it-
Yeah, I don't want that molten plastic. You know, there's some talk about microplastics in soil. I would love to see some scientific data, but that's one thing I'm not willing to do is burn, you know, melted plastic in that soil.
So
And
do you burn offsite and then just
offsite.
roll it on?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep. That's right.
cool.
All right, we really need to get going because I do not want to rush part 3. That's going to be the most critical part of this. I need to be done with this part 2 by 11, so 5 till. Yep. Okay, planting. So honestly, guys, when it comes to planting, I've done this when it comes to like bed prep. I've done this with tractors, with tillers, zero till, all kinds of ways. All of it can grow great lettuce. So I'm not going to really spend a lot of time on like how we do it because I don't think it's going to be as beneficial for your growing system when it comes to lettuce. But there's kind of 3 ways that we've done this, and we've done, you know, paper pot transplanter, hand transplanting, and then using the 5-row jang. So paper pot, it's a very enjoyable tool to use, but like I kind of said with the post harvest, when I make a decision about what tool to bring on the farm, I'm looking at the whole system from seed to store, right? So just because a tool looks awesome and amazing, and maybe it saves you time for that one task, I'm looking at the consequences for the other 5 to 10 steps down the road. Does that make sense? There's unintended consequences for every decision that we make as farmers. And just because a farmer tells you it's a good idea may not mean that it's a good idea for you. You got to really look at those things. But paper pot, it is very fast. One guy can do a bed in 10 minutes. It is very expensive to get started. So for the price of one cat tunnel, which can make you a lot of money, you know, you're looking at, do I want to get a paper pot transplanter or a tunnel? I'd say get a tunnel. That would be my personal opinion. But in your context, it may make more sense to get a paper pot planter. One thing I would recommend is if you could try one first, do it. If you know a farmer who has one, I've had a lot of folks that come to my farm, they think they're going to buy one, they try ours, and they're like, yep, not for me. I'm not going to do it. So if you can go see one in person, try it friends out before you do it, I would recommend you do that. It can be a little tricky at first to learn. What I found is that the soil tilth is key. There's a lot less forgiveness in your soil tilth. You got to clean up the paper afterwards. And guys, I've never seen it decompose. They say it decomposes. I've been using it now I got it in 2016. I still see these old papers around. Like, you know, so that's a hassle that we did not enjoy doing. But it can save you a lot of time on labor on the front end. So again, context, there's one crop that we do use the paper pot planter for, and that is beets. We still found that it grows the best beets. So here's just like a little video. I'm sure all of you guys have seen this before, but it's just very, 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 very fast. All right, so when it comes to fabric, here's a bed that's ready to plant, and then this is just basically, I'll get this to play here. Kind of see, we're just kind of pushing that in, just pushing it in. Yeah, I did. Okay, so for Salanova, it's a 4x6 grid, which is 4 rows, 6 inches apart in row. And I think it's 8 inches. No. I think it's 7 inches apart. I can't remember. I'll look back at that. It's all staggered. I like it staggered. And the reason why I like staggered plantings is because the reason why I like to do staggered planting is because of consistent airflow. I really like that. If you have them in this nice even grid, then where the lettuce kind of touches each other, you're going to have less airflow there. So I have found you want consistent airflow is really important. I'm sorry? Say that one more time. I like to have 18 inches is ideal. Not always possible. Okay, so before you plant, make sure that your irrigation system is ready to turn on. Don't think, oh, I'll just go get the hose afterwards. No, make sure that you're ready to turn on that switch. When it's July and it's 90 degrees by 9 a.m., you need that water to turn on now, not afterwards. The grace time to watering is very, very low. We've lost many beds of lettuce because we thought, we were going to have time to make that happen. All right, the next thing when it comes to the actual production of lettuce is once you get it planted, whatever method you decide, shade cloth is it is a must. I like 30% personally. You can do 50, but 30% is what we like just because it doesn't get as leggy. So this here is open field. Again, if you don't have tunnels, then you start with hoops. And we like to do each individual row if we're doing that. Sometimes you can get small strips of shade cloth cheaper if you can. What I like to do is I'll leave this on for 10 to 14 days. And then it comes off. Doesn't matter how hot it is, because if not, what I found is that if you leave it on, the lettuce will lose color and it won't be as dense and heavy. So I like a good 2 weeks of solid, just let that sun do its thing. If your soil is covered, that lettuce, the surface of that lettuce will be, whatever the surface temperature of that soil typically. If you get into tunnels, it gets very easy to do all this. Very, very easy. So if you look here, we have permanent drip tape header there. We have permanent Netafems on that side. We have an automatic irrigation system. There's a manual shutoff valve, so we can easily switch to overhead and to drip. So oftentimes when we first plant, we're using the overhead irrigation because we can water that whole, all the lettuce transplants can be wet within 5 minutes. But if you do drip tape, it could be 15 to 20 minutes, depends on how slow your water pressure is. So that waters it very quickly. And then in the summertime, depending on how hot it is, but oftentimes what we'll do is we'll have that set for 2 times a day, maybe 12 hours apart, for 15 minutes each, right? What you don't want to do is you never want the transplant cells that you just planted to dry out, right? Because it's trying to heal. You disrupted its roots. You pulled it out of the cell, and you're putting it in the plot, in the ground. And so what's happening is the plant is trying to put as much energy for those roots getting established in that new soil. So we want to make it easy for them. We want to keep it as cool as we can. We want to keep the soil cool, and we want to make sure that there's plenty of moisture to keep those plant babies happy. All right, so this is one of my favorite tools on the farm. This is amazing. This is really, really great. Now, this is not bare. Now, this is bare soil, so I'm going to contradict myself here. So just bear with me. Once So this is a 5-row jang. We're doing 2 passes, which means there's 10 rows of plants on a 30-inch bed. So within 12 days, that whole bed has good coverage, right? Now, it's overhead netafim, so it's very gentle for the most part. And what we're doing is, after we're seeding, we're doing like maybe 4 cycles of water, 10 to 15 minutes each, because it is bare soil and it dries out more. It's very telling when you have 2 tunnels side by side. One you direct seed to bare soil, and the other one was fabric. Like, you have to watch this very, very closely, because it will dry out so fast. And so this is really important to water. Now, that is a very expensive tool. That is a $2,500 tool. And you better have no weeds in those beds. In fact, the first year I did a jang seeder, I could not see the arugula that I planted. And so I just went, you know what? I'll do this next year. Because I just realized, okay, I need to make sure that I'm tarping my beds. It's just so many weeds. And what you don't want to do is you don't want your pack shed person spending 2 hours picking weeds from the arugula or the salad mix. Like, you need to have a perfectly clean, weed-free bed in order for this to work. So there is no forgiveness with this tool. None whatsoever. You better have your beds level and make sure that you have your weed problem under control. Because it will, in my opinion, if you don't, this is a waste of money. This is why if you get started, it's best to do fabric in your rotation, because you can get that weekly cash flow. And while you're using fabric, you're basically, it's doing the exact same thing as tarp. It's pre-emergent weeding, right? Weeds kind of go up to they try to germinate. They're starved for light because of the fabric. Then they die. When you pull that off, you have a stale bed. So you can use fabric for your first 2 years and then switch to this. That's kind of what we did. So this is week 1 after seeding. And believe it or not, this can be 18 days in the summertime. 18 days. We can get 50 pounds per bed. So you can seed standing up, which is pretty sweet. If you were to go to my farm right now and go, hey, would you guys rather use the jang or transplant? Like, man, this all day long. Then you have something like this that's clean, relatively clean. As long as there's no leaks in your plastic, then you don't have heavy drips dropping in your aisleways and backsplashing into your crop, then you can harvest this when it's dry and not have to wash this, because it's been washed very gently by the netafim misters every day, gently with well water. We're going to wash with the exact same water in the post-harvest, right? So as someone who's looking at my whole farm system, I'm always going, how can I save time in the pack shed? There was one year where once we got our pack shed kind of dialed in and we started doing a lot less of this, my wife, we were doing farmers market. I think this was back in 2018. She was doing all the packing for farmers market in a half day. It used to take her days. So I'm telling you, like, it's real. When you can cut down that time, like, it's real. And most of you guys know what a greens harvester is. They're really enjoyable to use. You do have to still bend over. We have not yet got that extension for the tool yet. It's on the list of things to make happen. But that is a very good, easy system to consider as an alternative to Salanova. We were talking about Salanova earlier. But the yield isn't as high. So that's what you're sacrificing. You're sacrificing a little bit of yield. But think about, when you're doing transplants, think about how much time you had invested just to get that transplant in the ground, right? There's a lot of risk, a lot of work and investment goes in to a good, healthy transplant. So what the Jane seeder does, it basically cuts out 4 weeks of all that crop care, because when you have a greenhouse, you're watering that greenhouse every day. Now, we have automatic timers in our greenhouse now, so on the weekend we don't have to go there and water. But during the day, when it's summertime, you're in there 3 days a week watering those things. When you go to this, that you're seeding, which is 2 passes, so it literally takes, like your Robert, who's my field production guy, literally 2 minutes, guys, and he's out of there. It's crazy. So if it's kind of one of these things, if you have a little bit more space and not a lot of time, this is a winner, right? You're gonna lose that on yield, but this would be the first summer that we're going to 1 full tunnel of direct seeded greens every single week. We're not doing any Salanova this year. This summer. We're doing it right now because our yields can be 180 pounds, so it's literally 3 times the amount of the yield in the spring. But in the summer, Salanova yields go down a good bit. So my team is very excited. We know we're going to get a little bit less yield, but we're hoping that maybe if we change our packaging up again and our price structure, we can make up for that loss. But we're very excited on switching to that Jane. So you can see how tightly that is. The surface of the soil underneath there is very, very cool because it's completely shaded by all those crops. Now the paths, that's hot, right? But we're not trying to grow crops in there, so we're okay with that being hot. What we want is our beds to be cool enough to make sure that we want to make sure that each year we have more earthworms and microbes than we did the year before. So here's kind of a sheet which is on y'all's workbook that we passed out earlier. I'm sorry? Not for the Jang seeder, it's all raw. Yep. All right, so here is kind of this overview when it comes to the production of lettuce. Variety. We've really talked about variety. Really want to hit that home. That's really important. Germination in the fridge for 48 hours. Before our new greenhouse, we needed to harden off our plants. And you guys, if you're in the field, they need to be hardened off. But since we're growing in a protected greenhouse, and now all of our plants are going into protected tunnels, we've actually skipped the hardening off step. But if you don't have that when you're first starting out, or you don't have that now, then hardening off is a good thing to practice. Be sure that you have really good soil fertility. It's vital. Set up your automatic irrigation. This is really important. The more you can automate your farm, again, I am every year trying to make the farm run without me as an actual, boots on the ground person. That way, that's going to give me more energy to do things that only I can do. Mainly, really look at soil health, do a lot more data, do a lot more research, try things. We're always looking at how we can save time. If you're always, in the weeds, so to say, farming, you'll never get that outlook perspective hey, what's going on here? Man, there's some, let's stop doing this. Sometimes you need to have energy to make the decision to stop certain things that you're doing that's making you lose money. But if you're always just running around crazy, like timers, and I forgot to turn off this nozzle, or there's just weeds everywhere, and everything is failing, then you'll never get that outside perspective to figure out how can I make my farm a more enjoyable place to be. If you make your farm an enjoyable place to be, your people will want to stay with you. And let me tell you, I know what it was like having train new people, and there's something enjoyable about that. But it is nice having someone who just stays on. Like, you just don't have to keep retraining them. They're getting better each year. It just makes farming a lot more enjoyable. So the point was that is like, if you can install automatic irrigation on every block, every tunnel, it will make your summer growing life very enjoyable. When I did this back in 2016, that was the first August we took a week-long vacation up north. And that was like, and we came back and everything was still alive. Right? So, which is pretty amazing. And it's a $25 timer. Like, it doesn't take much to completely free up your time and your life. Planting before the sun hits the plants in the morning. This is really important. Now, we used to do this in the evening. That's the best time. But like, we're putting the kids to bed. You know, I think every parent knows, once you have the victory of kids in bed, you're toast. You don't want to go out there and work anymore. So for us, it's like, it's, you know, once we're in the house, we're not going back out to work. So that needs to be done before the sun hits the plants. And so you need to make sure that you have your system and your schedule accommodating for that to happen. Whether that's you, if you can't do that, hire someone who can. One thing about the system is that you don't have to be the one doing it. It's pretty, like, you can delegate this to other people. Shade cloth is vital. That's really, really important. And taking off that shade cloth, actually, it should have been 1 to 2 weeks. That was a typo. You want a few weeks in there where it's full sun so it doesn't get leggy. And one of the hardest things to do is harvest before 8 a.m. That's really, really hard. But if you can do that, that will extend your harvest a lot. And then observe. Every day I'm walking, I'm just looking, I'm observing. Again, if you're doing everything all the time, you don't have that time to go, hey, what's going on? Like, I noticed that's just not growing as fast as we planted this 3 weeks ago, and it's growing slower than what we did last week. Like, what's going on with that? If you're just always going, you don't have time to be still and observe and make decisions like you need to make. So this is a short video on kind of what our current zero-till bed prep is like. This will only work if you have really hot summers. So what I'm doing, this process is called time cropping, where I'm harvesting, I'm doing compost, watering that in, covering this up with shade, with a fabric or plastic. I like fabric because it's lighter to move around. And I'm letting time break down. I'm letting time, heat, and microbes and earthworm break down the residue, where I can then come back afterwards with a different crop without having to do any raking, any tilling, anything at all. If you're doing fertility, then I would do fertility before I water and cover crop in. Then once all that's done, then you can direct seed and plant right into that bed. So that's what we're doing in the summertime. Right now we are doing a lot of hand cropping out, which is, not fun to do. But in the summertime, I'm really out for my team, right? Like, I don't want them to be burnt out. And so if they're doing tasks that time could do for them, I would rather make a little bit less money and give my team a little reprieve from this laborious work. So green's harvesting there, applying compost down. Then I'm watering that in really, really well. Kind of see there. Put that fabric down for 7 days, and there it is. That's what it looks like after 7 days. That's how I fold it up. Now I'm going to plant radishes back here. No raking, just right into that. That, and there you go. And then I tarp that as well. And we planted head lettuce right into that. No tilling whatsoever. This was in the end of July. I did this film in 2019, I believe. So that is a summer-grown Adriana, which is very, very difficult to do. Now, if you don't have hot enough summers for that to work, consider yourself blessed farmers, and you probably don't need to be in this class. But for those of you who have brutal summers and you dread bad prep, consider time cropping. Just cover it up. Let the microbes and heat disintegrate it. It's helped us eliminate burnout in our team for the past 2 years. All right, so disease. Disease is really, really tough. One thing that this is something that it's one of the biggest challenges that I have, that I am always looking to help prevent. What I found with disease is that you cannot reverse it once it starts. You can slow it down, but you can't reverse it. But the best thing to do when it comes to disease is to prevent it from happening in the first place. So that is keeping your tools clean. Your soil needs to be healthy. I'm doing a lot of crop rotations. Winter dry farming, which is where I'm not watering during the winter. I'm keeping that soil surface powder, right? Because soil-borne pathogens travel through moisture. So keep it dry. That will really reduce your disease a lot. It's kind of scary to do at first, but man, in the wintertime, you can get by with a pretty dry soil because it's not hot. I'm doing biofumigation and steaming, which is going to be very controversial. But I would love to just, if y'all can just allow me to explain a little bit the benefits that we've seen. Again, these are just tools that are at your disposal for disease prevention. The two things that I use is not a fertilizer, is Ultra and Regalia. Those two products really help with preventing disease. It's not a fix-all. If you see a disease, it's not going to stop it. But I've seen a big reduction in plant diseases by using these two products in tandem together every single week year-round. It's made a massive, massive difference. All right, the next one is steaming. So now we're getting into so this is a lot more complex. And I've been looking at this for a while. But I was really scared. I did not like the idea that I was going to be killing microbes. That's what this does. So what this does is that this is going to heat your soil to 160, 180 degrees. It's killing all weed seeds, all microbes, any living thing, good and bad, it's dead on the top 2 inches. Now, beyond that 2 inches, it's living, right? So it's not like nuking, the earth, 100 feet down below. It's just doing that top few inches. In my experience, what I've akin this to is like if you were to go get sterile soil that had no weeds, that was steamed from a nursery, right? And you apply that to the top of a raised bed, that's what you're doing here. You are killing you're killing everything, but what you're doing is you're resetting that top 2 inches. So what we'll do after this is we'll go by and we'll put on what is called Organics 800. It's an organic, it's got 800 species of microbes, fungi, protozoa. I mean, it is loaded with all kinds of goodies. And we'll inoculate the surface of the soil, water that in, and we can see earthworms on the surface of the soil in 24 hours with that product. It's pretty amazing. So we're essentially resetting the top 2 inches. So there's doing a tunnel. I rented this from a friend, which he's no longer renting out. And I'm looking to buy my own, and then I'll hopefully have it available for folks to rent from me if they want to. So that's kind of the size of it in compared to a cat tunnel. And so if you look here, that steamer that we had was a very old, just the old steamer. It's very inefficient, blew through. More detail than I want to tell you that it did. And it can only do one bed at a time, where these new ones can do like 4 beds at one time and a half the fuel. It's pretty amazing. So there's a steam sock that runs the whole length of that bed. That plastic keeps the heat from the steam in place, and it's sterilizing the top 2 inches of the soil. Once that's done, there's that product, Organics. Which I found to give us really good results, thank you. So what's pretty amazing is the weed pressure, okay? This is the same tunnel. This was before we steamed it, right here, okay? We actually lost that. It was actually a new field, or actually, we put up a new tunnel years ago, and we made 3 beds that used to be an old road, and now those crops aren't growing very well. So the weed pressure was pretty nasty. We steamed it, 0 weeds, okay? And we normally get 50 pounds per bed of greens, and that one yielded us close to 90. No fertilizer. It's pretty incredible. So in microbes, they have nutrition locked up in them, right? When they die, they excrete, they're excreting the nutrients that they've been eating. Well, when you steam and you kill those microbes, it's releasing a massive flush of nutrient, like massive flush. Like more fertilizer is released naturally by killing those microbes than any fertilizer I've ever applied. We just could not believe, like we were getting, our tomatoes, I think this year we got 1,000 pounds on a 80-foot bed in 4.5 weeks or so, which is like triple the amount we did the year before. Just crazy numbers, right? No nutrition added. So there's no weeds. So I have a farmer friend of mine. He's in Memphis. He's a 10-acre kind of classic truck guy, and he wants one just for his weeds, right? So I really like that steamer. We steamed every bed. We steamed every tunnel on our farm last year except for one tunnel. And that tunnel is almost worthless because it is so disease-ridden, and everything else is just singing along. Biofumigation. Really like this. I started playing around with this years ago. Paul Whittaker taught us about solarization, is where you're using the sun to help steam your soil. This is grass clippings, 100 pounds per bed. We tilled it in, watered it, put a piece of clear plastic over it, sealed the tunnel like you would solarization, and in 2 weeks, we just had a beautiful, beautiful bed of lettuce. It was amazing. In fact, let me go back to that one. In this particular bed right here, we, 2019, brought fusarium wilt to our farm through this hurricane, and we could not get rid of it. This tunnel would not grow anything for a year. We did biofumigation, and we've been just cranking out produce ever since. So there's several options you have. You don't have to do the whole steaming. What's great about steaming is that it takes 2 hours versus 2 weeks, right? Pest control. There's lots of pests out there. I'm only going to cover what affects us. Deer used to be our big one for us. Not so much anymore because of some neighbors' dogs. Aphids, as we covered briefly. Cucumber beetles, which kind of came a few years ago for late summer. And slugs. We don't have a lot of pest pressure, but aphids has certainly been probably our worst. So aphids, you guys ever seen, I'm sure you all have seen similar pictures on your farm. This is our farm. Can be if we let it. We like to use safer soap, and once a week. Like we just, whether we see it or not, it's going on. And that keeps us from having a bad outbreak. These guys are brutal. Look at that. I mean, I've never seen that before. Just kind of showed up in the middle of one summer, and just every summer, there's like 1 week where it'll pop up. Worms. We don't have a lot of worms, but occasionally it will. Like if we have a really wet month, overcast, then worms will start. And deer. I mean, it's just they're so bad. Tall fences are great, but they're expensive. You can drop 20 grand easy protecting a farm, which is worth it. And if you do, you got to make sure it's tall And I always, my uncles are, my brother-in-laws are massive hunters, so they're like, hey, when that fails, I'll get you a bigger gun. All right, season extension. This is really where the money is to be made. Got low hoops, cat tunnels, high tunnels. The low hoops is a great way to get started because it's very inexpensive, and you can get really, really far with this. You can start working on, getting to market 8 weeks earlier, 8 weeks later than everybody else, and then take that money and invest into a cat tunnel, right? And once you do that, then you can work on investing into high tunnels. We would do more high tunnels, but we have a lease on our farm. We don't own it. So we don't want to invest $25,000 anymore into we thought we were going to be able to buy it, but it didn't work out. So we're currently leasing. We don't own it. So, or else all we would have is high tunnels because you can control them. Part 3. All right. So any questions on any of that? All right. Wait for the microphone. This lady right here.
Are you just steaming your beds once a year?
So I would say as needed. I'm going to say the way things are looking, probably every 2 to 3 years, maybe, or only if you need it. Like I wouldn't do it unless I felt like there was a real need.
On your baby greens that you seed with the Jang seeder, I'm seeing, are you only cutting it one time?
Once.
And then,
one and done.
why is that?
Because the quality. So I am charging as much as I possibly can. That's, we'll kind of get into the sales. And the only way I can charge what I charge is because they know every single week it's going to be tender, tasty, it's going to be high quality. That's kind of why. I could get, but then you got to think about like the time. For us, it just wasn't worth it. We're just like, cut it once, we're going to get a big yield, turn it over. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I missed what you used for your cucumber beetles. We lose hundreds of dollars worth of cucumbers every year.
Yeah, Pyganic helps.
What are you using?
Let's do deal with the cucumbers if we have time at the end of this, because that's a whole other rabbit trail. Yep. Or come see me afterwards. We can talk cucumbers for hours. I'll get to you next. Hang on.
Back to the direct seeded lettuce mix.
Yep.
What mix are you using, and are you getting okay germination in the middle of the summer?
Yes, we're doing. I think we're doing Rosie, Tokyo Bacana, and Carlton. Is our custom mix. Yep.
All right, my question was just curious on size of your high tunnels, caterpillars.
Great question. Yes. So high tunnels are 30 by 100. Cat tunnels are 16 by 100. And then the low hoops are generally 30 inches wide. We are experimenting with a new cat tunnel that we just built that's 18 foot wide that we're loving. Gentleman in the back.
Difference in the yield between Salanova and loose leaf?
It's loose leaf is about half.
Half, okay.
It's about half. Yep.
Where are we?
We good? All right. You guys need a break, or can we just keep on going? All right, let's do it. All right, so we're on the last part. This is really my favorite topic to talk about because this is where, right now, we're just growing glorified compost up to this point. That's all we're doing, right? And so unless we think about the harvesting, packing, and sales, we're kind of just wasting our time. So this is where I really want to dive as deep as time will allow us. All right, so briefly, when it comes to harvesting, it's the easiest part of this whole thing. It's pretty easy. Doesn't matter what kind of bin you do. We use black bins only because we can get them locally. But my basic tips would be harvest Before 8, use a sharp, clean, serrated knife. Doesn't have to be serrated, but that's what we happen to use. Make sure you place that bin out of the hot sun, and make sure the lid is on it. Again, everything that I'm kind of talking about is really for summer, right? So it's when it's 100 degrees outside by 10 a.m. I like to place into my walk-in cooler as soon as possible. And I like that walk-in cooler to be 35 to 37. Below 40. For sure below 40. I've seen lettuce mix last 4 weeks at this temperature. The thing that I like to do with lettuce is that you want to keep it as cool as possible from the time you harvest it to the time that it goes in the customer's hands. That's really important. So I like to have a climate-controlled pack shed, not only for my people, but for the product itself. We used to pack an open-air pack shed, and when it's summer in the afternoon and the heat index is literally 120 degrees, that lettuce is suffering. It's suffering a lot. Post-harvest. So this is our number one bottleneck on the farm. Is always the pack shed. We're on leased land, and I cannot expand my pack shed. Like, it turned into be more of a complicated problem. So we're utilizing what we have. My wife designed this layout, and the way this layout works is where just her and one of our daughters can do 100 pounds of salad mix an hour. That's kind of like their benchmark. Asha, when she was 12, she was able to wash, spin, and pack 100 pounds an hour by herself. And that is because, we have a bubbler there, we have 2 spinners, and then that's where things get bagged. And then on the opposite side, you can have other people. Now we have a lot more people working the pack shed than we did in years past. If you notice here, this becomes really important when you have help. The biggest debate I have with me and my management team, mainly my pack shed manager and my farm manager, is people's inability to understand and retain instruction. And I always tell, they love saying, well, they should do this. I said, you guys have to stop shooting all over yourself and know that there's no such thing as people should know or remember. They're not going to happen. You have to make sure that you have proper instructions in front of them that they can look at. So if you look above that spinner, we have detailed micro-minute of how what hand to use. Like, you'll be amazed on if you show someone, it's like, it wasn't that hard. Like, my 12-year-old girl can do it. Why can't you do it? You're 25. So having SOPs up there really, really does help. Unfortunately, we've had 1 or 2 people who just wouldn't even look at the SOPs. And so if you get that kind of person, they're not cut out to farm. It's just not everybody is a farmer. And so there comes a point, it's like, okay, it's okay if you can't remember what I told you or don't remember the process, but if you can't remember to read the SOP in front of your face, this is not going to work out long term. So having that is really good for you to do as a farmer too, right? Everyone's system is going to be different. If you could print that out for yourself, and like if you could think about, hey, I'm doing this, can I write this out in a way that a child could read and understand and do? I found myself when I write things down, what we do, I found, why am I doing this stuff? I have no idea. Just some weird habit that I like to do, so let's just cut that out, right? So doing that will really, really help. This is mid-packing, right? So it's a mess. I kind of want to show you guys, like, I'm sure everyone has had pack sheds like this. This is very, very normal for us. Again, this is a GAP certified shed. It's a lot easier to get things GAP certified than what you probably think. The biggest thing is having SOPs. If you got a bunch of those papers out, you're going to be good. And don't tell them any information. Just only answer the question that they ask, because they don't know what they're doing either. They're just kind of winging it just like you are. So you don't want to ask them any questions that they have to give you a yes or no answer for. So having little pack stations, now that we're moving a lot more produce through our farm, and our children are getting older, so they enjoy working in the pack shed more. It's nice to have these little stations. They can be very, very simple. Scale, there's some basic packing SOPs, knives. Doesn't have to be fancy or elaborate. But having that is really, really helpful if you want to have other people help you on the farm. So this is where we collect data. So this is so we have two parts to our pack shed. We have kind of like our what we call the outside part, which is where our farm store is, and this is like where we'll put our Shopify bags at. This is also where the farm team comes from the field from a door over here. They weigh on a scale opposite of this table, and then as soon as they weigh that product or count it, they automatically put it into our data log. And that's been really important. So that way, we're not having to keep track of like phones. It's just on the desktop. It's really easy. Everyone does it, and they enjoy it. It's pretty fun too. It's a program that my small farms big change guy Gavin. He's in California right now. That he developed for us. And what it does is that they can see how many units is bunches or pounds that we've harvested year to date. So like, I think by June or July, we were like over at, I think they were over 100,000 units. And they were just like, my goodness, like how, so it really helps with the team. Like they can kind of see like, man, we're, let's see if we can break these numbers. So having those numbers where we can kind of see, I think it was like almost 5,000 entries of like different, times that they actually put in product. So that's really great. And they're just basic sheets and forms. There's our basic printer for our market label, basic supplies. So that's kind of like our station. It's just nice to have one of those for everybody. We have a first aid kit, which is really important. There's our washing system there, just very, very basic, DIY. This is really important, having a message system. My team hates walkie-talkies. It just never worked. I just could not get them to do it, to keep up with it, and get lost. So we use, for our main communication, we use a app. I used to do paper, but they would lose the paper, or to get wet, or just something, dog ate it. So now we have an app called To Do. It's Microsoft To Do. It's very, very, it's pretty amazing. So we can have a harvest list, and it can be shared with our harvest team. And then it'll say, harvest 100 bunches of kale from field 2, tunnel 3, bed 3. So they know exactly where to go. Because if you tell someone there, they can forget it, or they thought, well, I thought you said bed 1. And so having that written down on their phone that they never lose, no one has ever lost a phone on our farm. They just never lose it. It's right there, and they know the details. And then we can put small things like, hey, this week we want to add 2 more leaves to a bunch. So instead of 6 leaves per bunch, make it 8, because the plant's a little bit smaller. We can put nuanced details in there that they can go, okay, I'm doing this, here's the details. And they don't have to remember this mass amount of detail, for the whole day of harvesting. And then when they're done, they click, and everyone's phone goes, ding, and we know, oh, he got that harvest, I don't have to do that. So it is amazing for communication. I have that for the buy list. So when it comes to buying supplies, right, I'm not in the field anymore or in the pack shed anymore. So my pack shed manager is going, this is what we need to buy. Judah's like, hey, this, we're getting low on this seed. We need more drip tape fittings. He can put it on there. I can see every Monday, I go in the office, what needs to be bought, here it is. I'll check it off, that he knows that it was bought. And then, so that's what we use. We don't have morning meetings anymore. Everyone's trained. They don't like morning meetings. They're like, hey, we're out of here at 3 o'clock, and every time you chat with us, that means we're gonna have to work harder during the day. So they know what they're doing. I have a very hands-off approach to managing. I'm not a micromanager. Except for that first year. It's going to be, if you survive that first year, you're good. But that first year, I don't want to hear a peep. I don't care what you think. I don't care how your day is. Like, I just need you to show up, do our list, and then let's see if you can make it as a farmer for 52 weeks. And after that first year, then it's like, okay, well, we're open to more opinions. It seems to be that I understand how mean and insensitive that sounds, and I understand. The problem is in my early years, when I was like, hey, what do you think? What do you think? We would just have these think sessions, and nothing would get done. And then if you didn't do their idea, they would get all butthurt about it. And it's like, listen, I'm the farmer here. I've scratched this thing from nothing. You know nothing about farming. You don't have a farm, so you're telling me how to run my farm? It ain't going to happen here. So, because what ends up happening, it just becomes, when that happens among our team members, a lot of drama starts to take place. And we don't need any more drama, And so, since we have a drama-free workplace, the only drama we have is crop failure. So our team likes that, right? They're like, hey, work, they really enjoy work. They have fun with each other, but we're not going to complain about, the farm this. And, we all know the problems, right? But we're very deliberate about solving these things. So it's like, once a year, I'll pull my team aside and be like, hey, guys, how was the year? What did you think? Is there one change that you would like to see on the farm from me? Yes. They have a list. Great, let's hear it. I'm going to try and change that for you. I think that's a great idea. The more that are with me, then the more I'm open to their ideas. I'll be like, hey, here's a problem. Why don't you solve it? Come up with some ideas. Come back with me. Well, what do you think we can do to solve it? And that's been really effective. So that's worked for me. That may not work for you. But what that's resulted for me is that there's very little drama in the workspace. And then after that first year trial, again, I'm not, mean. It's just more of like, hey, you're working for Judah. Judah doesn't like people, so you're lucky. Like he said yes to hiring you. Just do what he says, and you'll do great. And that's the kind of people you want, because farming is brutal. And if we have to tiptoe around people's feelings, oh, they don't want to do this, and it's just a dumpster fire. So, message board. Back to messaging. Communication, the reason why I got on that, because communication is very, very important. And a lot of our problems on the farm has been because of the lack or miscommunication. So having the messages, that first year, everyone knows, like, hey, I'm here to learn, and then after that first year, if they survive that, then they're a really great fit for us. So having that to-do list really helps with what things need to be done. And now Judah's kind of making that list for the team members. The one thing for communication is that we have a schedule Monday through Friday, and everyone knows what to do. Like, Michaela doesn't need to ask what to do today. She knows. Greenhouse. Here's your list. Make it happen. So everyone just goes right to their task, and they just enjoy it. They do audiobooks. As long as the job gets done, I don't care. I just want to get done right, and it needs to happen by the end of the day. This communication, though, there is some things that we need to make sure that gets posted on this board. So this is our walk-in cooler. So if someone comes in and let's just say we were short 25 heads of Toscano kale. Judah goes, hey, we're short because I need to let it grow some more. He'll put on there, hey, Sarah, or whoever is packing kale for all three markets, divide it evenly between the markets. Don't just fill one market and have the other short. So small little nuances like that is really nice to have on there. We have an overflow cooler that's about 2,000 feet away. And so this is where we have just different overflow. So if Sarah is going, hey, where's my chard, we can go, hey, on the overflow cooler is four totes of chard. So having a kind of a central board like this for the produce has been really helpful for us. So walk-in cooler, it's too small, but we make it work. There's these amazing things called wheels. that we discovered a few years ago, and ever since we have not looked back. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing having things rolling around on wheels. Labeling totes is really important as well. So this is obviously is for all the, what's in there is what's going to go to markets, maybe Shopify. Also gets labeled after it comes from the field. So if it comes from the field, it's being labeled, what item is in there, the date it was harvested, and how much. Having little tires like this is really beneficial for us. There's not a lot of equipment or tools needed for the pack shed, but having really good, reliable, there's good brands of these and there's bad ones. So spending an extra $10 on a good brand of a tire like this is really worth the money. So this is things that we're doing because we're expanding in volume, but we're having a hard time with space. So with our markets, we have a limited amount of space. And so what we do here, this is 4 bags deep. This is a cabinet, what we call our bag cabinet. And so when they're done tying that, from here, it goes right onto this cabinet right there. That will then get rolled into the walk-in cooler. And then on market morning, we roll that into our trailer that has a ramp. And it gets rolled off the ramp into the market display. And that is my farmer's market cabinet. Does that make sense? So that has been game changer for us. And so at that, it was like, the pack shed, people were like, this is amazing. We don't have boxes. We don't have the totes, bags. For us, we're like, man, roll out. And it's like, you know how much time you spend unbagging? And so it's just there. So we have 2 more of these like this. We have one for Shopify. We have one for our 1-pound bags, which we'll get into. And if I had a bigger walk-in cooler, I'm ready to make the whole farmer's market module like this, where we walk out of the cooler with this, roll out, and we're done. So and these are the kind of improvements that you need to have time to work on, right? Everyone knows you build a project, that takes time. But if you're every day weeding and trying to figure out why you're having bad germination and your lettuce is dirty and you're spending 12 hours instead of 1 washing lettuce, you can't do these kind of things and have time for the people that you love. So there's our 1-pound bags. Small signs up there, like, we have these small things. In the summertime, we used to get a lot of homeschool girls, and not to be sexist or anything, but women do a much better job in the pack shed than men, at least in Selma, Tennessee. So, but we'll get a lot of these homeschool girls will come in, which are amazing to work with. But sometimes they wouldn't think about the quality of produce they were packing. So in there it says, if the quality of produce is bad enough that you would not eat it yourself, do not pack it. So just little small things like that. Again, as much communication as you can have in this pack will just make it enjoyable. So we used to do a lot more boxes, but since we got to that cabinet crate system, we're no longer doing boxes. But that's all the produce. This is about half of what we produce in a week in the summertime. So my kids, they unloaded it. The more you can get your children involved, it really makes farming very rewarding and satisfying. All right, so sales opportunities. So let's kind of get into sales. I've done all these. Farmers markets, CSA, community supported agriculture, online shopping, Shopify, which we still do currently. I've worked with some food hubs that are actually great, by the way, if you can find a good one. Grocery stores can be good. On-farm pickup, food aggregators, and then home deliveries. There's lots of other, but those are the ones that I have experience personally dealing with. And all of them have pros and cons. And so I would say if you want to be more in the wholesale business, it makes a lot of sense to focus on 10 items or less, because then you can grow a lot of it. And then you have economies at scale on your side. But if you want to get into the retail, direct-to-consumer aspect, that's where you're going to have to look at growing a lot more variety than just head lettuce. At least that's been my experience. A lot of this also depends on who you have on your team and what kind of person, For me, I would rather drive 3 hours to a farmer's market than deal with Shopify, right? Because I can be with my kids, I can listen to audiobook, podcast, it's more enjoyable. I spend 3 hours on the computer trying to figure out how to upload a product in Shopify, I'm ready to, throw the computer out the window. Now, I have some guys in my farm like, forget that drive, man. I can knock this out in 30 minutes. So a lot of this really has to do with, how much patience do you have for any one of these sales outlets. One thing I'll say on all this is not everybody is going to be your customer. If you want to go to grocery stores, not every grocery store is going to be your customer. Same thing for farmers market. And you get into farmers markets, I have farmers markets, in the summertime, me and the kids, we're up at 1 a.m. People want us to harvest before. They want us to harvest everything Saturday morning. And so it's like, I'm sorry, ma'am, sir, but you're not my customer. You have no idea what it takes to get this to the market. So again, it took me a few years to not take no personally. Currently, right now, we're going really hard on farmers markets and on and Shopify. I have a guy, Sarah, who's my pack shed greenhouse manager. She's great. She came from California. She's worked in the office for, she's got many, many years. She's older, and so she just has a lot of experience. This for her is nothing. She can do in literally 15 minutes what it would take me a half a day to do. So that works. She likes to pack the orders. She'll write them personalized notes. That's like her thing, right? Where my wife did not like that. So it really just depends who you like. Who you have on your farm and who you think you would like to sell to. The other thing I would say is, regardless of what you like and don't like, you need to make money, right? And so you may go, well, you know what? I would love to just be all 100% on-farm pickup. That's great. I would love that too. But that's not going to happen this year, most likely, right? And so what do I need to do in the meantime to make this happen? So right now, we're doing farmers markets. Well, the one thing with farmers markets is I have found that it is better to pay that farmers market manager a percentage rather than a hourly rate. I've just found if they're making a percentage, they're going to be, when I'm at Franklin, I never stop. I'm moving things around. I'm watching people. I'm talking to them. I'm really trying to make this market better than the last one. So if you have someone who's just there by the hour, they're just doing their job. But if they go, hey, if I can make more money, how can I do that? And so oftentimes, if you're nicer to someone, if you display differently, if you're always kind of like, hey, let's make some fancy signages, you can make more and more each week. So we started doing that with Old Lady for Jackson about 3 years ago, and that really seemed to work out well. And so that's kind of how we're managing that, is anything that I'm not doing, and the way I'm looking at that, it's not, well, that's a ton of money. It's, well, I would give away 20% anyways if I was selling at wholesale. So now if someone can just do it, there's no ordering, there's no invoices, it's all in Square, so I can track in real time. Yep, they're doing great. The money's in my bank. It's just, that works for me. Here is some things that I really like to look at when it comes to sales, right? Being consistent. consistency is vital, not only in production, but in sales. In other words, show up. If you say you're going to be on time with a box of produce, be on time. And if you're late, then just communicate. Whatever the case, be reliable and consistent. All right? Be nice. Like, being nice goes a long ways in today's world. It really, really does. Being understanding with rejection. Don't take it personal. Not everyone is your client. Sometimes a no can be a yes, and it can also help lead to another door. If you're dealing with chefs, just be sensitive to their hours. When I was doing a lot more chefs, I would just walk in the back door around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and just go, hey, where's chef at? I wouldn't do any appointments. I wouldn't call ahead. You just go in the back, act like you know what you're doing, and you've done this 100 times before, and you'll usually attract a massive group of chefs. You're like, chef, we got to buy this amazing food, because they're used to buying crap from Cisco. So if you want to be in the chef market, which I no longer want to be right now for various reasons, mainly because they don't pay me, and I want to get paid. But if you want to get into that scene, that's really a great way to get your foot in the door. Ask what your client needs. Just because you want to grow lettuce, butter lettuce, you may not be able to force butter lettuce on all your clients. Got to find out, what do they want. Taking full responsibility for a mistake, even if it's partially the client's fault. We live in a world where everyone's a victim, right? It's everybody's fault except for yours. What I found is, if a mistake gets made, even it's like, bro, I've got the text. It's like, you know what? Just take the L and go, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do better next time. That goes a long, long ways. Just taking responsibility and taking it without trying to point the finger at someone else goes a long, long ways in this world of farming and business. Understanding that chefs and people talk a lot. Like, if you're a jerk and you want to blame everybody else, like, word gets around quick. Like, man, don't mess with that guy. He'll just screw you over, right? Be the guy that, everyone is talking positive about. Like, hey, man, good service. He made some mistakes, but he owned up to it. He gave us free product the next week, whatever the case is. Just be a good person. And communication is key. Food aggregators, these can be good, but they're not reliable. So, but I found for us that they can be really good for cash flow, because most of the time they do pay upon delivery. Most of the time they're a nonprofit, which I have my own feelings about the nonprofit world in agriculture. But they are, for the most part, if they're good, they'll usually have payment upon arrival, which is very, very nice. Chefs, kind of talked about that. Salad mix is one of the best things that you can sell to chefs, except mini gyms. That was being talked about when I was kind of getting out of it. Grocery stores was my favorite, because just like I got in with a pretty good size chain, and they just want 3 or 4 products, but they want it consistently. Like, if you don't have it, you'll make the manager feel bad. So you to do grocery stores, there's a lot less forgiveness and skipping weeks of having product. Like, you can't be a hit and miss, where a chef may be a little bit more forgiving for that. Farmers market, it's really the easiest way to get started. Like, if you're kind of like want to kind of get into this game, this is the easiest way to get into this. But I found that presentation matters, and with farmers market, every farmers market is different. And so this is what's crazy, is Jackson, Tennessee, which is where we got our start at, it was a small city, about 70,000 people, but the farmers market manager, she was incredible. And they wanted head lettuce like this, loose, flowing out of the baskets. We loved it, because it's like harvest in a tote, unstack, put it there, never touch it again. Pretty sweet. But we go to Franklin, and they wouldn't touch it. They did not like it. Like, they were almost offended that we would have loose leaf out like that, because other people would touch it. It was just like, what's going on here? Like, you guys are supposed to have more money in the city. Like, wouldn't you want this too? But I had to kind of observe why they weren't buying our product, and then I changed. So one thing I did is they had a popcorn vendor there. Like, you guys ever see those big kettle corn popcorn vendors? And people were walking around with these big 2 bags of popcorn. I'm like, man, I wonder if I filled one of those suckers up with lettuce and people would buy them. And my goodness, the increase was insane. We went from selling 4 to 5 pounds of salad mix at this new Franklin Farmers Market to, I think, we're doing 200 pounds out of these 2 bags. It's just crazy. But again, I had to shift and change. So I had to change my system, which change the packaging. Now we got to get new packaging. But being able to shift according to what your customer wants is really important for sales. And my thought was like, well, it's more plastic, You people hate plastic, so why wouldn't you buy? Well, it just won't keep as long. And so even though these people want, they care about the environment and they don't want plastic, they still understand that if you don't put plastic in your food, it's not going to last. Let me go back to that. So we did the exact same thing with head lettuce. So as in this picture, our head lettuce was loose. Once we changed to packaged head lettuce and we put the name of the variety on it, we were barely selling 15, 20 heads a week. And now in the summertime, it's around 400 head by having it packaged in a bag with the label of the variety. They just like that. Another thing about packaging is that we now have our logo, website, and address on there, right? Because everybody's like, hey, you got a business card? No, it's right there on the back. Just take a picture or buy a bag, and there's a card. So that really kind of solved a lot of things. One, people knew what variety they were getting, and 2, they got our contact information. So many people now come back to our market, and they'll be like, oh man, I went to a friend's house, and I had y'all's lettuce, and I've never had lettuce so sweet in my life. I came from New York, and I can't grow anything here in Tennessee, and I just never had anything so sweet. So, but they would had no idea who we were if that label wasn't on that bag. So it is extra work, and it's plastic, and I completely get why that's a put off. But when it comes to sales, this has been massive. Like, I generally will not go to a farmer's market if it makes anything less than $1,000, because it's just like, it's work getting up, making this happen. That market I was only doing $800 a week. Like, it was brutal. I saw potential, and I knew, the people are here, but they're just not buying from me. What in the world? And so I told Ashley, I said, if I can't figure it out by the end of, I think it was 2019, that we're just going to have to find a different market, because this is a lot of energy for only $800 a week. So once we made the sale, I think it was literally the next week, it was double, and then just triple, and then it was just been going up since then. I think we'll do, so this market now is a $20,000 a week market in that morning, right? Simply by just, not right now, but in the summertime when we have everything and we're unlimited lettuce, it's insane. But that's only because we really paid attention to packaging. We've really figured out, okay, how do they want it? Can we do different sizes? Can we change the name of products? There was one summer when we changed the bags. In the summertime, nobody wanted to buy our green leaf lettuce. Well, we're looking for lettuce for burgers. I'm like, well, green leaf. I mean, what else do you want? No. And so the next week I said, you forget this. So I told Ash, I said, let's edit that to say burger lettuce. So we did burger lettuce, 5x sales. I'm sorry? Burger lettuce, for hamburgers. Instead of green leaf, we just changed the name to burger. That's what they're looking for anyways. So it's psychology is what this is. So each week I'm looking, and this is what's crazy is that people are looking, they're scanning, and they tend to buy things from certain levels, right? And so I'll watch them, because my girls have the register, and I'll watch this one area, I'll have 4 areas of dressings, right? And this one area, they're just buying that whole cluster out. So I'll just keep moving things, and they'll pass by another cluster here to go to this one. It makes absolute no sense. I've experimented with clamshells on the shelf, a line of 8, and they'll go for the exact middle one every time. They'll take it, I'll put another one back. They'll take it like all morning long. It's just crazy. So if you really pay attention to people's habits, will not make sense. Like, don't try to figure out why they're doing it. Just understand they are and try to leverage your product to meet their, their habits. And it changes every single week. I find it very fascinating and very exciting. And I'm definitely not bored. But doing that each week, it's like we don't know, like we don't see a ceiling anytime soon. Like, it's pretty insane. So clams versus bags. We did a lot of stuff in clams. My wife likes this better because if it goes into the bottom of a bag, it won't get smushed. But some markets like the bag because they feel like it's less plastic, which I believe it is less plastic. But one thing we can do, and this is a good example, is we're running low on arugula. Now, arugula is not our number one seller. There's people, either you love it or you hate it. So we're running short. People don't need a lot of it. And so what we did is we have a 48-ounce clamshell, and we're normally selling a third pound of arugula for $5. So like I like to have $5, $10, $15, $20 items. So what we did is we switched from a third pound bag of arugula to a 2-ounce clamshell of arugula. Now the clamshell is almost $1 because the price the last 2 years have just gone crazy. But that's going to be a way for the arugula not to get compact as much, and it's also going to be a way for us to get, because I've been wanting to raise prices for 2 years now because inflation has crippled us. So what we're doing is we're doing smaller packages, ounces, for the same price. So instead of selling a third ounce for, say, $7, we're just going to have a $5 item and just have 2 ounces. So we found that people like that a lot more. Like, and it'll be on there. It'll say 2 ounces. People will know, oh, man, okay, it's less, but it's $5. All right, that's okay. I'll throw the rest away anyways when I get home. So it's all psychology. So I found that $5, $10, $15 price range is good. And what I try to do is I'm trying to find the balance of, like, what will people buy? And you want 10% of your people going, this is too much, ain't no way. We are certified organic, by the way, which we did get recently. We try to avoid it, but we realized we couldn't raise prices unless we were. And the other reason why we went organic is that we had such a massive influx from California and New York that people would not buy from us unless we were certified. And so that was an observation that I made. I just don't want to give the government any more money, because that was my only reason not to do it. But it was well worth the certification, just for the be able to say, hey, this is why it costs the way it does. So these 2 bags, people love these 2 bags. I mean, little kids love carrying them around. They just love it. So when you have a lot of it and you need to move it, we sell a 1 pound 2 bag for $10. And I mean, we have pictures where people literally have, they're carrying logs of the salad mix. So this kind of packaging, this is where you're turning glorified compost into dollars. And this is what needs to happen I want every farmer to make more dollars so you can keep making your farm a more enjoyable place to be and help you create more time for the other things that you want to do besides farming. Value add. All right. So our oldest daughter, when she was 6, came down with stage 4 cancer. They gave her 2 weeks to live. Once she had her surgery, we went on this radical raw food, just complete different diet. So we couldn't get our kids to eat salad. We had 4 of them at the time. So she didn't want to give them, sugar processed food. So she made this whole food dressing, and every one of our kids, since they could eat, loved this dressing. So we decided to offer it for sale. We have a certified kitchen. We don't own one, but it's being made in a certified kitchen, and we get $10 a bottle for that. It costs about $2 to make. they're already buying salads, right? So you put on there, elevate your salad, and we can sell a lot of these dressings. The sales isn't great in the wintertime, but in the summertime, when people are looking for food for a party for that Saturday or Sunday, they're looking for different things like this to try. We started doing veggie platters, garden salads. We found that people don't have a lot of time. It's a very, very common thing. So we'll have guys that will buy 6 of these things. I haven't asked him yet, but I'm assuming it's for one day of the week for his lunches. Like, it means a lot of salad in there. And so that's just been a way to help us move excess produce if we have it. And we can get more per ounce by adding, pre-making the salads than we could by its raw form. Pesto, we're actually making kale pesto now, which in my opinion is actually better than the basil pesto. So I have about 30 items on my wish list that I hope we can get to in the next few years. I just hired a guy 2 days a week to help me kind of make this happen. But I stopped doing wholesale 100% because I didn't like the fact that they wanted 50% less, didn't know if we were going to get paid. It was a hit and miss. It was just unreliable. And so I went, well, hey, it's always easier to sell more product to an existing customer than get a new one. And so I already have 300 customers who come to shop every Saturday. How can I sell them more of my product? So that's kind of what this is. So there's our salads. So you can make more money without growing more. That's the idea behind this. Your laws and your market laws will be the limiting factor on this. But there is a massive untapped opportunity in this. Farms will not have time to do this, but if you can find someone who opened up a cafe, a coffee shop, they have a certified kitchen, and you can, make sure it's legal, and like, hey, man, I would love to make some salads for you guys. Like, yeah, I'll charge you $2 a salad. Just give me the product, and I'll do that when I'm not doing anything. And that's kind of what we're doing with our guy. He's got this cafe. He's trying to get it more business, but in the meantime, he's making cash flow in the slow hours. And we're being benefited because we don't have time to do this. Nor do we really want to. So we'll just give him all of our ingredients whole, and then he'll divvy on up. So that's kind of a way to add the value add without you thinking, how in the world am I going to be putting, you see tomatoes. Who has time to be doing this when there's tomato season? Like, that's insane. But give that to someone else. Delegate that. And you'll be amazed on how much people will spend on a pre-made salad. Like, it's phenomenal. So it's all, right now, I'm at the point of I'm looking to add more value to my farm because I try to give my full-time employees a $3 pay raise every year that are with me. And so I'm looking, how can the farm make more money, and how can I give my customers more value and save them time? We do stir-fry packs. We're doing a lot more, like if we have excess celery in the fall, we'll do veggie broth. There's just, the ideas are really limitless on what you can do. We just started this up 2 weeks ago. We went crazy. Salads in the jar. Go back to that. We're just using a little bit of Ashley's dressing. There's some microgreens up top. There's like an ounce or 2 of kale that's chopped up. And we sell those things for $15. We sell out. We can't make enough. Okay. Again, the limitations is going to be time and the legal aspect of this, which every state will be different. Again, ours is in a certified inspected kitchen. There's our dressings. So we just now add a ranch because it's like, we're already doing the dressing business. Might as well add ranch. And then just tell your story. People want to know your story. Everyone's story is unique and special. Everyone has that story. And if you can connect with that part of your customers, you will do really, really, really well. Yes?
How much waste do you have?
You mean after the end of each market?
Well, no, just
in general?
however you might measure it.
I would say it right now is zero. There's zero waste right now. Now, the end of markets, we may have like a tote left over of like miscellaneous things, which we'll donate to to what's called like a giving garden. It's a church that will kind of take leftover produce and give to those in need. And the summertime, it's very little. I mean, we're usually short. Like I know in our Franklin market, I'm always thousands of dollars short of product that I could have sold if I would have had it. All right, so to kind of close this up here, I just want to kind of give you guys some other things that I do. I do these things called farm matches, where it's a 2-day, 15-hour days, where we really dive into everything. At the evenings, we go to 10 o'clock. We do a table sessions where everyone walks away with a concrete plan for their farm. In here, I'm just telling you what I do, but I don't know y'all's story. I don't know what your struggle is, right? Here, we can really nerd out on making sure that you have what you need as far as your problems. All foods and drinks are provided. We do this once a month. I have the lettuce masterclass, which this is not even scratching the surface of what's in there. This really kind of covers the journey of me growing lettuce year-round, all the problems, solutions, step-by-step irrigation. Basically, everything there I know about lettuce is in this course. I have that book, which is back there. That book is expensive. We self-publish it. Cost me a ton of money. That is a $250 book, so it's not your typical book. This thing will help you solve problems this summer. And that's it. Thank you guys for your time. And we have 15 minutes for a Q&A. Yes, that was my goal. Yes.
Presentation, Ray. Just one question. So when COVID hit 3 years ago, it affected a lot of stuff. So what were the challenges you faced during the past 3 years, and how did you, face? How do you handle them?
Can you ask that one more time in one sentence?
What challenges did you face during COVID?
COVID, okay,
and
yes.
how did you manage them?
Yes, thank you. Yep. So the question was how did we deal with COVID? We had to pivot. We lost $6,000 a week in sales instantly, overnight. And so what we did is we went hard to retail. We just kind of found out, okay, wherever there's challenges, there's opportunity. So we kind of went, okay, there's a challenge. It's there. We can't change it. So we just looked hard for opportunities every day. I was just looking at, okay, what's good that can happen today? My team terrified that they're going to lose their job. I mean, honestly, I was too. I just didn't show it. But because, I saw the loss in finances, but we just went hard, saw the opportunity. We just went above and beyond. I mean, old ladies would call with their, just explaining how hard it's been. And, I just was just like, took every call, helped as many people as I could. And the number one thing we did, I told my team, is that we're going to be a rock. So we ain't going nowhere. As long as we have breath, life, we're not going to be dumb, but we just went hard. We went hard. Like that's kind of what we did. So we just doubled down on the opportunity and did very, very well.
Before we do another question, I just wanted to let everybody know your yellow feedback cards, please fill those out and then return them to me when you're finished. I'll be around the room, probably standing up, so just look for me, okay?
Ahava, can you go ahead and pass out those papers? Yeah, okay, good. All right.
I was just wondering, what do you do for cooling? Like, if you're transporting, and once you're at the market, and you have especially lettuce in bags, and it's like 100 degrees.
Yep.
And you have your salad dressings and your pre-made. What do you do for that?
So we have a trailer. So typically, the trailer that's being transported, we're traveling and when it's nighttime, so there's no sun. So it's still pretty cold when we get there. And generally speaking, most greens are gone within 2 hours. Now, the other summer crops, it does take a lot longer. The other things that need to be cooled, we'll put on ice. We're working on investing into a rolling cooler. That would be like with a generator where like a reach in, like a legit kind of store cooler. Because we did notice there was a few times like, the directions that we do is somewhat shelf-stable, but we weren't happy about how warm it got. So it's a concern that we haven't 100% figured out, but
Thank you.
it needs to be addressed. Yes, sir.
In that same vein, what do you do with head lettuce at the market? We have trouble, you know, most of the time we're selling out an hour and a half or
Right.
whatever it is, but still, it's difficult for us to keep that fresh.
Yes.
If it lasts longer than that.
And that's why that was one of the benefits of putting lettuce in a bag, is it stayed fresh a lot longer. So that was kind of our solution. If you want it loose, which is my favorite aesthetically way to do it, then a spray bottle with some iced water really helps. Yes, ma'am.
Are you weighing out your bags and printing out the labels like in the moment, or are all those labels that you made for your bags pre-done and then you just stick them on?
So we leave that up to the pack shed manager. Normally for the bagged lettuce, we're doing it before because it's easier to apply that on a hard surface, you know. And it's when we weigh it, let's say we need 5.5 ounces. It's 5.5 ounces plus. So it's not a perfect weight, but we make sure that it's over what we're advertising it's going to be. And so we're not putting the exact weight on that. It's just, here's the label, and make sure it's at least that, if not more. Now for the microgreens, because it's a clamshell, we'll label that after the fact. Yes, sir.
No, you're good.
I'm sorry? They're doing the week. Right now they are doing the week. Yeah, it's on a Tuesday and a Wednesday currently. Yep.
This goes back to a picture you had in part 2. Where I work, it's a educational facility, so we have a lot of turnover of students, and we're looking for better ways to label our beds. And I saw briefly a picture of how you guys label, and I was curious on that setup.
Yes. So what it is it's like a really heavy-duty plastic tag. We actually have two. One is a little wider. I got them from Deerfield Supplies. I think you can get them from Johnny Seeds as well. And then another one is a white label that's, I believe, inch wide by a foot long. And they're nice because you can draw on them, right? And so we use that, so if they're really in a rush, they'll just write, hey, this is what we planted. We tried a different roller sizing. So we're always trying different things so they can put on there, hey, we tried this sprocket. We did this thing, and then they can take a picture of it. The goal is to leave them in there, but my kids end up finding them, and so they're everywhere. But they're very nice if you have adults working on the farm. Yes. Yep, dates, everything, variety. Robert will do as much information as possible. Too much information is better than not enough.
Did you have a question?
Yes, sir.
For your irrigation, did you say you had 2 lines of drip tape per bed?
Yes, that's right.
How are those spaced out, on that to the middle of the beds?
Yeah. So if there's 4 rows of lettuce in that bed, there's one between row 1 and row 2, and then there's one between row 3 and 4, right in the center.
On your disease control, going back to that with the, are you spraying on the foliage, or are you fertigating those disease controls?
It kind of depends what time of the year it is. Oftentimes we're doing foliar, in the wintertime especially. We don't like to fertigate in the soil unless we absolutely feel like we need to. So we're mainly doing foliar applications on that.
Could you tell us again the varieties you're using for the direct-seeded lettuce mix?
Yes, Tokyo Bacana, which is, if I remember the ratio, which we may change up a little bit more, is 60% Tokyo Bacana, 20% Carlton, and 20% Rosie. All from Johnny Seeds. I think that ratio is right.
Okay. So Carlton and Rosie are the two lettuces, and then Tokyo is the...
And technically, it's not a lettuce. It's a green.
Right. It's more of
We're
an
just
Asian
calling
green.
it. I mean, our customers can't tell the difference, and it has great taste, great growth.
And the Carlton and Rosie are germinating fine.
Beautifully. Beautifully. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. In fact, on that Carlton, one thing we do is I haven't figured out how to grow spinach in the summer just yet. So what we do is Carlton has it looks very similar to a space spinach. So we grow Carlton and then we label it summer spinach during the summertime. And we explain to people, hey, technically it's not a spinach, this is a green. Like, stop talking, I'll take it. So that's one way you can kind of, like, if you have good spinach sales, like for us, we can easily have $500 a week in spinach sales at a market. So if you can have one bed and do that, that was a really good move for us.
You briefly kind of mentioned, talked about it, but with your excess, and you make different stuff. But have you had any challenges with trying to meet demand and orders, keeping up with orders?
Our biggest problem with keeping up with orders, like via Shopify, this was really true in COVID, because our online orders went up 700%. It's really just having the people who are, not everyone is, so when you do Shopify, if one item is wrong, it can really cause a pretty upset customer. So our biggest problem was really having the right person managing that, who was really kind of in tune for how all that is being done. In terms of production, what we would try to do is currently right now, we're not growing enough to fulfill demand online. So what we do is we try to project what we think we'll have, and then we're putting an inventory on that limit on how much they can buy.
Do you just say we're out of stock and just let your customers know?
Yes. So what we'll do, on Shopify, it'll just say sold out. So in Shopify, the program we use, we'll say we only have 25 pounds of salad mix available. And then once that last 25 pound is sold, it'll say sold out. So they know, they cannot buy anything if it's sold out. So that really helped eliminate any of those, refund the money and all those kind of things. Occasionally we will have that where we kind of missed it. We thought we were going to have 20 pounds, but we didn't, and we'll have to refund them. But we try to minimize that because it's really a bad experience for the customer side. Well, you guys have been great. I've had a blast this morning. Thank you guys for coming. This has been wonderful. Great. And I'll be around all day today. So if you guys want to talk more cucumbers or anything,
I don't think so. Okay.
I'm game.